Good evening, Vacaville. This is the regularly scheduled City of Vacaville City Council meeting, April 9, 2024. It's 6 p.m. Do you have a roll call?
Council Agency Authority Member Stockton.
Here.
Silva.
Here.
Chapman.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wiley.
Here.
Vice Mayor, Vice Chair Ritchie.
Here.
Mayor, Chair Cartley.
Here. And if you're able, will you please stand for a moment of silence?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, Mr. City Manager, I understand there's no changes to tonight's agenda?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Do I have a motion? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And approval of the minutes from the last meeting, March 26th. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next, we do have a presentation tonight. So it is 2024 Fair Housing Month proclamation, and I do believe our Mary Decker, our Housing and Redevelopment Specialist, is here. Good evening. Yes, it's really important, the work that you and all the staff do. And so before I have you share a few words, I'd like to just read the proclamation for the audience here in the council chambers, but also those who are watching remotely. Whereas the principle of fair housing is not only state and national law and policy, but a fundamental human concept and entitlement for all citizens. And whereas discrimination based on race, national origin, gender, disability, familial status, exclusion of minor children, religion, marital status, sexual orientation, and source of income is illegal in California. And whereas as a community, we welcome all good neighbors, recognizing contributions and richness tendered by a wide variety of young and old, male and female, people of all colors and ethnic backgrounds, religious traditions. And whereas interested parties from both the private and public sectors will participate in a city, state, and national effort to promote fair housing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John Carley, Mayor of the City of Vacaville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2024 Fair Housing Month. So congratulations.
Yes.
Mayor Carley, Vice Mayor, and council members. Each April, nationwide, we commemorate the passage of the Fair Housing Act, signed into law 56 years ago on April 11th, 1968. This year, the theme is The Act in Action. It underscores the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to combating discrimination in housing, protecting fair housing rights to all who call America home, and redressing our nation's past discriminatory policies and practices. As we know, the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in all housing transactions. For our department to celebrate Fair Housing Month, the Housing and Community Services Department has scheduled a fair housing workshop on April 16th. We do that in partnership with Legal Services of Northern California and HUD's Department of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. They will both be here for that workshop. We invite all owners, property managers, and tenants. We are also conducting a fair housing poster contest. What does fair housing mean to you? That's going to be distributed to all of the Vacaville Unified School Districts, grades 1 through 8, and there will be prizes awarded in 3 different age groups. The entries for these posters are going to be due by April 30th. Flyers are available for both of them in the council chambers this afternoon. If anybody has questions, they can call our office, the main number, at 707-449-5675 for more information. And as tonight, we are recognizing the City of Vacaville's commitment to fair housing for our community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And on behalf of the council and to the entire staff in here in the city, we appreciate all the hard work you do to help those in our community. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Council.
Move on to consent item. There's two items, A and B. Anyone from the public wishing to pull an item or a member of the council for discussion? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And with that, we'll move on to business from the floor. This is a time where any member of the public can address the council on an item that's not on tonight's agenda, but it is in our jurisdiction. And each member will have up to 3 minutes to share. So please go ahead and come forward.
Evening. 1972, the Club of Rome was formed, a group of international movers and shakers to craft what they wanted to be the New World Order. It's geared for the year 2030, I understand nowadays. It's basically world communism. That same year, the financial arm of that group, the World Economic Forum, was established by Klaus Schwab and his wife. And he's a very interesting individual. He's very honest. He says that you will own nothing and you will be happy. He envisions people living in cubicles, being given credits to use by the government, if they're good citizens, for buying and selling. And I'm just wondering, his agenda is cramming up very closely to where we are today. Well, what do we have? We have California Forever showing up with billions of dollars, telling us that we're going to have peace on earth. We're going to have nirvana. We're going to have the idyllic society in their, little community that they want to establish. I don't believe it. I believe that they are sent here by the World Economic Forum. The fact that they have acquired funds from, I believe, one of the banks of England proves it to me. There's no major bank in this world that's not hardwired into the World Economic Forum and their agenda. They will offer you the world. You will receive hell. You will receive slavery. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Surface, I live in the county portion of Vacaville. This may not be under your preview, but I'd like to address the stop sign they put on Vanden Road at the railroad crossing. It is idiotic. It doesn't really solve a problem. It just backs up traffic, especially around the time that Travis lets out. I had a friend that sat there for 45 minutes trying to get through that intersection. They either need to put a stoplight in there or go back to leaving that an open road like it was. We didn't have all the traffic problems we have now. Like I said, this may not be under the preview of Vacaville, but I want to give you my idea about it. I commute on that road sometimes.
Are you referring to the Cannon Road?
Cannon Road, yeah. Well, where Cannon ties into Vanden Road. So right at that railroad crossing. I don't know what brilliant engineer came up with the idea of putting stop signs there, but it's not working and it needs to be reversed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. So I noticed in the paper a few days ago that the guys at California Forever granted several tens of thousands of dollars to UC to Davis to study agriculture amongst the solar panels that they're going to put out there. And I'm sure that for a few $1,000s more, UC is going to find out that, oh my gosh, the photovoltaic chemicals in those solar panels are going to be great for the soil. Just like everything else about California Forever, it's all built on lies and a lot of money. The survey that I'm sure some of you saw that was published in the paper about the voters' views of it was that, okay, they're saying 70% of Solano County voters will be against the initiative to build California forever. I hope that's true, but there was one little term that was buried in that article. It says, those people who had heard of it. And I wonder how many people are going to see their ballot there, not have any idea what that question's even about, and just go ahead and vote yes because no is so negative. Because they did not say in that survey of only 425 people, they didn't say how many they had to speak to in order to find people that actually knew about it. Because nobody in our city council is saying anything about California forever one way or the other. If the voters are not informed, they don't know anything, but they still vote.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? You've already spoken.
Can I speak again about California
No, no. You've already come forward. Thank you. Good evening.
Council. I'd just like to add about the California Forever thing. When billionaires come creeping in the middle of the night and buy up $900 million worth of land on the down low, they're up to no good. Why didn't these billionaires come to Solano County and make a big announcement that we're here to save your county and build you a new city? They didn't, because they're coming here to make money, period. That's it. They don't care about Solano County. They want to build their little town out there. They want to sell their houses with their one-car garages and everybody can walk to and fro. And they're going to take their money and leave. That's all they're interested in. If somebody comes creeping in your neighborhood and starts buying up all the houses on the streets that you live in on the down low, and then lets the lie that the Chinese Communist Party is buying all those homes, I hope that you feel threatened by that. As I told Mr. pardon me if I'm mispronouncing his name, Schmeck or Shrek or whatever his last name is, that heads up California Forever, I asked him to just take his money and all his billionaire friends and go build a town somewhere else. If Solano County wants another town, we'll build it. We'll choose the people that we want to build it, not people that come creeping in the middle of the night and buying up all the land and then just telling us, so much as telling us, we're going to do this whether you like it or not. I hope that the city council does take the advice of the former speaker and does start speaking up about this so that the people of this city know what's going on. Whether you're for it or against it, start talking about it before the election, because they're going to put this thing on the ballot and they're going to word it real fancy, and people are going to be faked out and vote for it by mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Mayor, good to see you. Council. I don't represent them, but the Republican Party made a proclamation after exhaustive work. And I'd like to see against why we do not support California Forever and the major impact on low-income people, housing, and the neglect that will occur countywide, and then we'll end up with more what I will call ghetto-like neighborhoods because the escape route is over there. These people bought land. You know, I had one friend of mine who thinks he's similar to me. He's not. They said, well, it's their land. They should do what they want. I said, no, 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 no. We have zoning, and we've all agreed to zoning. So when you sneak in and you buy up property that's zoned for agriculture, it's worth this amount of money. I know because I sold my family's farm. Then if you change it, and I believe it was Mr. Pelosi that did that down at Hunters Point, they bought up all these buildings. Then the taxpayer built light rail and new streets out to Hunters Point. They didn't do anything for the residents, just that. Quadrupled his money. And see, that's how some of politicians make a lot of money, because the taxpayer pays for it. They're trying to do the same thing, or actually I think they accomplished it out on Treasure Island. If you read that proclamation, it's a page and a half long, went through a lot of work to develop, and it was passed unanimously by the Republicans, which I am one of them. I'm not saying I'm not. But I would encourage you to read that because a whole lot of work went into that. And the city of Vacaville should make such a proclamation. And I encourage you, just download it, go through it. There's a lot of homework that went into coming up with that position. And you will see the reasons that are well thought out. Originally, it was going to be a city, but then they said, no, it's just going to be a community. So eventually it will become an administrative law city. We know that. Everybody knows that. But then to come in and buy up agricultural land and then demand that it get rezoned so that it'll more than quadruple their investment. They get fat and happy, and then areas of Vallejo, areas of Fairfield, areas of Vacaville will be neglected because there's a much better, newer, bright, shining object out in the farmland that was supposed to be agriculture. You need to come up with a position against California Forever and declare your position so that the people, the voters, know where you stand on this. Thank you very much. And again, please read that. A lot of work went into producing that document. It was not fly by night. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close business from the floor, and we are going to move on to public hearings. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. This first public hearing before you tonight is a resolution approving the engineer's report for the formation of green tree lighting, landscaping, and maintenance districts. Chris Joya from our Public Works Department is here with the presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This item for you tonight is the public hearing for the approval of the formation of the new assessment districts associated with the Green Tree Development Project. These include the Green Tree Lighting Assessment District number 166, Maintenance Assessment District number 167, Neighborhood Park North Assessment District number 168, and Neighborhood Park South Assessment District number 169. Public Works is requesting City Council approve the engineer's report, confirm the diagram and assessment, and levy the required assessments for the upcoming fiscal year 24-25. So this exhibit shows the assessment district boundary for the Green Tree project. Project is located on the west side of Leisuretown Road and south of Orange Drive. Project includes both residential and commercial uses. And just to kind of clarify, so lighting assessment district 166 boundary, that's the blue with the sort of hatching. It's the entire Green Tree development. Maintenance assessment district number 167, also blue boundary, no hatching. It's essentially the entire development also. Green Tree Park North 168. That's the dark green, north of Sequoia. And then Green Tree Park South, number 169, that's the light green, south of Sequoia. Basically 166, 167, the entire Green Tree development. North Park is north of Sequoia, and South Park is south of Sequoia. So assessment districts typically fund maintenance for street lighting, setback landscaping, open space, drainage facilities, and neighborhood parks. The conditions of approval for the Green Tree project required formation of maintenance districts for these uses. For fiscal year 24-25, the assessment is 0, as there are no improvements that are going to be maintained out there. It's anticipated that the assessments will be levied starting fiscal year 25-26. That's after the improvements are constructed and we're starting to maintain them. It should be noted that any assessments will be adjusted annually for inflation. It should be noted that on November 15th, 2022, City Council approved a development agreement for Green Tree, which included the contribution of city funding for the ongoing maintenance of the 2 neighborhood parks. So as such, the city will be responsible for 50% of the maintenance for the southern park and 10% of maintenance for the northern park. And And the amounts presented in the engineer's report and summarized in this staff report reflect the city's contribution towards maintenance. The process for the establishment of the Maintenance Assessment District is under the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972, which provides a mechanism to pay for these maintenance activities. At the March 26th City Council meeting, Council granted preliminary approval of the engineer's report and set the public hearing for tonight. Ballots were sent to the property owners at the conclusion of the last council meeting. The ballots are for whether the property owners approves the formation of the districts. The signed ballots are now in possession of the city clerk. After the public comment period, the city clerk will open the ballots and present the findings. That concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you for that. I know that the staff report answered pretty much everything for me. I'm not sure if anybody on the council has any questions, but seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open up to the public for comment.
Mr. Mayor, council, staff, public, my name is Roberto Valdez. I'm a longtime resident of Vacaville, as you know, and I take a big interest in what's happening in Green Valley. I've seen a lot of change, a lot of re-landscaping, a lot of trees being removed, probably impacting the wildlife. So I have one question for your expert, the staff person who's overseeing the project. I think it's good that you have lighting for the public there, especially there's a lot of elderly people there. I know of that, the Leisure Town apartments there. But what I have a question, Maya, is have you done any assessment of the impact that the lighting is going to have on the wildlife per se, so that there's some sort of a balance between what the safety issues may be for the public versus what the wildlife there? And there is a lot of wildlife, whether you like it or not, there is. And that's one of the things that I take great interest, as you heard me comment in the past. And so I leave it up to you to comment, gave you more specific. That's a wonderful short assessment, but I just got back from Texas, and let me tell you, you're living in a different world as far as they're concerned, and they're living in a different world as far as we're concerned. And so I would like to hear more specific detail so that the public knows what's going on. And the people, the residents there, and I don't live there, but I think the residents there have a big stake in that project, the impact it's going to have. And as you know, not only to the agriculture, the areas there, but also to the wildlife, more important. And you know what they were, I mentioned it before, I don't have to go into it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick, before you answer that, anyone else wishing to speak on this public hearing from the public? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this, and if you could go ahead and answer that question as best you can.
Yeah, whenever a project, this project was approved by City Council in, I think it was November of 2022. So whenever a project is approved, they go through an entitlement process which analyzes things such as the impact to wildlife, things like impact to the neighborhood, lighting, traffic, all environmental impacts. So I can't really address specifics of what was studied, but we did look at those types of things when a project is brought before Planning Commission and subsequently Council. So that's how I'd answer that. If you'd like more specifics, I could research, if there's a specific issue that you'd like to research and have me answer, I can certainly go ahead and do that. But I'm confident that all the impacts were analyzed as part of the original approval.
All right, yeah, thank you. So with that, not seeing any questions or comments, I do now. Vice Mayor Ritchie.
So make it short and sweet. I'd like to motion to approve the project.
Before we get there, there's more lights and we still have to open up the balance.
Now, yeah.
I'll let you do the motion. So when we get there, we'll do that. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Chapman.
Thank you. Quickly, you stated that a survey was sent to all the homeowners in the area. What's the deadline on the return of the surveys?
Well, there's a ballot after the last council meeting. We sent a ballot to the property owners of Green Tree, which there are 2. And we were supposed to receive the ballots by essentially this meeting, and we have received those ballots. And the ballot is basically whether they agree to form the district.
And you did not receive
We
any?
did receive those.
Yes, we have.
From both properties.
We're gonna,
Yes.
in just a minute, we're gonna open the ballots and see what they,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Oh, no problem. It's the process. It's the process, so.
I wasn't familiar with that.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
seeing how that's where we're at, City Clerk Michelle Thornburg, would you like to open up the ballots?
Both ballots are in the affirmative.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, that they are both in the affirmative, we can go ahead and take a motion. So now I'll give you the mic.
I'd like to motion to approve agenda item 8A to approve the Landline District, Assessor District for Green Tree.
I'll second.
So we have a motion, and Ms. Chapman already seconded. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So this passes, and thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll move on to business. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. This next item is a resolution initiating a general plan amendment for the preparation of a specific plan for the East of Leisure Town growth area. We have Aaron Morris and Kristen Plott here to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Carley and members of council. I'm here with my new Assistant Director, Kristen Pollitt, who prepared the report. I'll make the presentation, and we're really happy at the end to answer any questions. So the item before you is consideration of initiating a general plan amendment and specific plan process for the East of Leisure Town Road growth area. Before we get into the requested action in more detail, just a little bit of background. In the year 2008, urban growth boundary was established for the city of Vacaville, and it essentially identifies Vacaville's ultimate limit. Beyond that line, Vacaville is not expected to grow. The site we're discussing tonight, or the area, is within the city's urban growth boundary. When the last comprehensive general plan update was completed in 2015, that is when the Northeast growth area and the East of Leisure Town Road growth area were established. And that's really the basis of this planning effort, is some groundwork that was laid in 2008 by creating a boundary for Vacaville, and in 2015 by identifying this as one of the 2 growth areas for our future development. Also important to the background for this project is that the city has a biotechnology and advanced manufacturing initiative that was launched in 2019, has been very successful. That's important to this project because that initiative identifies the need for a greater variety of housing types in Vacaville to support the kind of industries that are here and that want to be here in the future. Also, most of the council were here in 2022 when you adopted a Vacaville-specific housing strategy, and that's where we took a very comprehensive look, again, through the lens of economic development and quality of life, and the council concluded that there's a need for a greater diversity of housing types in Vacaville, in particular missing middle housing, smaller houses that are more acquirable by entry-level home buyers, et cetera. And then this council adopted the state-mandated housing element in 2023, and there's a theme here, the need for a greater variety of housing types in Vacaville. So this evening, for your consideration, would be a request to initiate a general plan amendment to allow preparation of a specific plan for the East of Leisure Town Road area, also to adopt guiding principles that would establish expectations for development within the specific plan. We're asking that you authorize staff to issue the request for proposals to hire the consultants that will help prepare this work, and that also you direct your staff to work closely with Solano County staff to identify a collaborative process for plan development, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my presentation. So this diagram at a very broad level shows both of the growth areas. So up at the top of the diagram, the northeast growth area is outlined. That would be the subject of a separate item that will come before council at a later date. And then the east of Leisure-Town growth area is toward the south of the area. And if we get into a little bit of the details about this area, it's 1,300 square acres approximately. 648 of that acreage is in the county right now, unincorporated. All of the 648 acres are in the city's urban reserve. And this was a land use designation established back in 2015. The council said, we're not going to plan anything to happen there until we're ready and until we think it makes sense. And so it's all urban reserve. Since 2015, for the rest of the 1,300 acres, so 669 acres of the 1,300 have been annexed into the city, and that's where you have Brighton Landing, Roberts Ranch, the approved Farm and Alamo Creek subdivision as well. And we still have housing under construction in this area, and a lot of housing completed in this area, and some that will start construction hopefully soon. So if you'll recall, toward the end of last year in October, we presented the urban reserve analysis and all the detailed information about the city's approved and planned housing projects, and council provided direction to staff to bring this initiation item back. So here we are. And before I get into the details of that, actually, I'm going to get into the details of the proposal. So within the east of Leisure-Town growth area, there are 3 separate development teams that are pursuing this specific plan. And we've worked with these teams to establish a collaborative process so that they can all be planned together as one specific plan. And that's important because it provides an opportunity to make sure these are integrated neighborhoods that collectively achieve the things that the city council wants to achieve in this area. So I'm going to briefly go through each of the separate sites and then talk about more of the process. So the first property that's part of the proposed specific plan is the Donaldson Ramos property. And I put this diagram up, but I just caution the council that this is just a very preliminary land use concept that was filed last year to start the conversation. All of the things you see on this concept are subject to go through the specific planning process and ultimately be, will probably evolve over time. This property is 254 acres, and the conceptual diagram you're seeing would result in approximately 2,900 homes, a 9-acre commercial and mixed-use site, a 12.6-acre school site, 36 acres of parks, and 14 acres of detention basins. I'm sharing the information, again, this is the concept, just to give the council an idea of the sense of scale. The next property, which is immediately to the north of the property we just discussed, is the Raisins Chen property. This is a 165-acre site. Again, this is one of our urban reserve properties. Their initial development concepts include approximately 1,000 new housing units, 6 to 10 acres of public parkland, and of course an ag buffer. And then the third property is actually quite a ways south of all these. This is at the southeast corner of Fry Road and Leisure-Town Road. This is the A&P Children's Investment Property. This is 127 acres, and their initial concepts are about 1,000 housing units, 3.9 acres of commercial mixed use, a couple neighborhood parks, and some additional open space, plus detention basins for stormwater. So the initiation of a specific plan is a general plan amendment, but there's a whole bunch of other things that go along with the package if the council chooses to initiate this planning effort this evening. So if the council initiates a general plan amendment, then the staff working with consultants we'd hire the consultants, we'd come back to council for that, but ultimately we'd be developing a comprehensive specific plan for the entire east of Leisure-Town growth area. There's pre-zoning of the properties that would be aligning with the specific plan. There would be development agreements with the different developers, which deal with the phasing of development, the timing, and fundamentally the substantial public benefits that the city would negotiate in exchange for these development projects. There would be tentative maps to subdivide these properties, again, phasing plans, and I think most importantly, the environmental review that we'd be pursuing would be an EIR, an environmental impact report that would look at all of the development collectively and would provide really the greatest level of CEQA review for this type of project. Part of what's in your package is, I think it's called Attachment B, and these are draft guiding principles. And the document that is presented to the council is intended to provide, if you adopt it, you're providing staff and the developer some high-level policy guidance that will help provide some framework for the specific plan process. So the draft guiding principles have some planning concepts about the type of neighborhood design we're looking for, the type of housing that's being sought, the fact that it would include inclusionary housing as part of the development. It addresses that these would be fiscally neutral projects or fiscally positive projects, talks a little bit about the kind of infrastructure these projects would need to look at, and it identifies a high level of community amenities, not just to the future residents, but to Vacaville, that the council would expect that the specific plan will bring. As I mentioned earlier, this project will require the city to hire consultants to help prepare the specific plan, the environmental impact report, the fiscal studies, and there's probably some other stuff as well, in addition to having some contract staff to assist with project management. As proposed, the developers would be funding every single dollar of all of that consultant work, as well as pay for any city staff time on this project. And they've indicated that they're willing and interested in entering into a funding agreement that would lay that all out, and that is something that would assure that the city's general fund is not spent on this privately initiated specific plan. This project will require substantial coordination with other agencies. And as many of you know, the conversation with Solano County has definitely started, both about the east of Leisure growth area and the separate northeast growth area. This is going to have to be a collaborative planning effort. Anytime there's an annexation, the city will enter into a tax share agreement with the county, and there's a general way that works. But fundamentally, the reason why we're asking for your direction to work closely with the county in a collaborative manner is because that's what it's going to take, I think, to make this project successful. We will also be working with the Airport Land Use Commission. We've already met with and we'll meet again with Vacaville Unified School District. We'll definitely be coordinating with the Solano Irrigation District. The project area will have to detach from the fire district that it's in. That's another conversation. And then, of course, when we prepare an EIR, we'll be working closely with many different state agencies on the environmental effects of the project. So after the council directed us to bring this project back, one of the parts of that direction was to do public outreach so that you wouldn't be receiving this item without the public having a chance to hear about what's happening and why and what it consists of. So since October, actually earlier this year, we've held 3 community meetings. One was with the Lock Padden and Maplewood neighborhoods on February 21st of 2024. The second was a broad community meeting. We invited more than 3,000 people, the same 3,000 people that got the notice of this meeting. And that was we had an in-person meeting on February 28th, and then we had the same exact agenda and presentation via Zoom on May 5th. We had really good participation from the community on this one, and just a lot of great questions and comments. This slide only summarizes some of the comments and issues that were raised by the public. We have very long and detailed lists of all the comments we got that will help sort of guide the specific plan effort. Just briefly, traffic and circulation, of course, are of interest to the public on this and how this project will address its impacts on the existing circulation network and what kind of future circulation network is needed. There's a lot of interest in preservation of open space and making sure that any new neighborhoods connect well with existing neighborhoods and help existing neighborhoods connect to parks and other amenities. Although our city does not provide schools, the availability of new schools to serve the plan areas is just critical, and that was underscored by many members of the public at the meetings. There were a lot of general just questions and concerns about how the utilities would work. That is something that would be figured out as part of the specific plan. But we have some detailed comments in that area. And then there were general concerns about growth and whether this growth makes sense here, and how the relationship between new housing and housing prices and that kind of thing. I would call those kind of quality of life issues. And then also noise came up as far as how new development would affect existing residents and how, as Leisure Road gets busier, this is a very specific comment that came up a couple of times, how that noise affects those existing and planned future houses. So the next steps, should the council initiate the general plan amendment and take the other actions this evening, staff would be issuing a request for proposal to get fiscal consultants, an EIR consultant, and a specific plan consultant. We would then, once those consultants were on board, that would come back to council for award of the contract, so you would know who we're hiring and have a say in that. And then we would begin drafting the specific plan and the environmental review. This is anticipated to be about a 3-year process from when it starts. So I just want to let the council know this isn't like a we'll see you in a year and here's a specific plan, the EIR. This is, if you initiate this tonight, this will be probably back before you for the final action around the beginning of 2027. So it's not a fast-moving project, but we will keep moving through the process. As part of the specific plan environmental review, kind of subsequent to that, but also kind of in parallel with that, there'll be work on specific entitlements for the different development areas. That will include like development agreements, tentative maps, design review, et cetera. And then just ultimately, I want to be very clear, all of the aspects of this project will go to Planning Commission, and in some cases Parks and Rec Commission for recommendation, and then ultimately everything comes to council for final decision. So that's an overview of the next steps at a pretty high level. So this is going, now we're talking about maybe January of 27 or something like that. If the council ultimately adopts a specific plan, certifies the EIR, that's not when this project actually is done. Because it's in the county at this point, it would go through an annexation process through LAFCO. And so there need to be a municipal services review update that the city would be tasked with preparing for LAFCO, a sphere of influence amendment, which the developers would be paying for LAFCO to go through that process, and then annexation of these properties, probably not all at once, but in some phased fashion. But again, this is all like the work of a few years out from now. Just want to make it clear that we don't have the last stop. We actually, there's subsequent steps after the city has moved past the kind of that approval point, if that happens. And then this is a slide we used at the community meeting just to illustrate the multi-year project timeline. We are actually at the dot that's on the left. This is possibly project initiation evening. At the community meetings, we were before the dot on the left. And it just really tries to illustrate that there's a lot that needs to happen, including council action, final action, an annexation process, design work, public works, and things like the green tree item you saw this evening, assessment districts, and then ultimately construction. So these are not housing units that are imminent. They're more housing units that would be potentially happening some years from now. So the requested action is shown on the screen, and Christy and I are happy to answer any questions. We also have a consultant that's assisted us and other staff as needed to pull forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. And for questions, Councilmember Silva.
So thanks for the presentation. I'll reserve kind of my input for the second part, but can you just clarify a little bit more about how we go about selecting consultants? More specifically, so I heard you loud and clear that everything will be funded by the developers, but how do we ensure that it's the consultants that's hired is something that's less biased, and we maintain that level of trust with our community?
That is a great question. So as proposed, the city of Vacaville will hire the consultant. We will hold the contract with the consultant, and we will choose the consultant. So that assures that, and the developer, we're going to find a way to involve them in the selection process, because this is millions of dollars of their money, and so they'll have a role. But ultimately, the city will be the decision maker. There'll be a selection committee. We'll put out a request for proposal. We'll give consultants 4 to 5 weeks to put together their proposal. It's very regimented in government. All the proposals get scored using a level scoring sheet, and then ultimately a certain set of those proposals gets interviewed by the selection panel, and then ultimately we'll bring that recommended consultant to council for award of the contract. But we will actually be paying the consultant with the developer's money. We'll be controlling their work product as a city. We'll be more in the driver's seat, and this is very different than the approaches taken with any other specific plan in Vacaville in the past.
Councilmember Wiley.
Thank you for the information. I just have a few questions, and I know that this is a very long process when you look at the whole thing. And I do understand that nuances or changes are expected, some little nuances, but we've had some things that look like about faces and drastic changes. So I want to know, does this language of this, the guiding principles, protect us from some of those things where they start as senior housing and then they end up as something else? So that's question number one. And question number two is, there are 3 specific owners or developers here, and there's a little bit of property, I think, that's owned by someone else. How does that play into this whole thing? And then how likely is it that in this long-term year thing, we're going to have some housing mandates from the state that say, well, it doesn't matter what your guiding principles say, here's what you're going to do? Because that seems to happen also in some of the projects. And just, the housing that we say we need and we're looking at, and the missing middle, and the inclusionary housing, and the range of ages, and the range of prices, how can we get that in reality? Nothing big, just tell me, tell me that.
I'm jotting that last one down as how to achieve the dream, and I'll get there at the end. Really, really small questions, Councilmember Wiley, thank you. Starting at the top, the guiding principles are intended to set kind of a broad framework, but ultimately the actual land uses and the detailed regulations for the land uses will be established through the specific plan. So much like we all learned over the last year and a half about the state's interest in objective design standards and the requirement that we have them, we have the opportunity to, through the specific plan, not just decide which land uses are going where, but to provide detailed zoning regulations that are objective in nature that I can't guarantee anything with the state, but will basically stand up to the test of objectivity. So we will use the specific plan very diligently as the tool to articulate what the city wants to accomplish and how we're going to get there. I'll get to your other part about state control in a minute. The outside properties, we have reached out to owners of land that are within the unincorporated east of Leisure-Town growth area but are not part of the trio of developers that have come forward. If they're not funding the effort, they still will be coordinated with, but we did do some reach out to see if any of them wanted to join the effort and fund planning for their properties, and we did not get affirmative responses there. So we'll have to figure out how to plan those areas in some fashion, but we did reach out to everyone and to collect whoever was interested in participating in the funding of the project. State control, that's a big thing. I think I kind of answered that. The state laws keep changing, but fundamentally, the specific plan is a very strong tool that the city has. And I think also it's important to recognize as a council that this is a general plan amendment. The state has not yet, and I'm looking at Melinda, but the state, a legislative act such as changing the general plan is fully in the hands of cities at this point and remains fully in the hands of cities. So if the council isn't satisfied with a specific plan that is drafted and goes through a multi-year public process, you don't have to adopt the general plan amendment. You don't have to adopt a specific plan. And I think that's what helps guarantee that we will achieve the dream.
So I had objective standards on my list, but I thought maybe this was too early in the process. But I am happy to hear that you are keeping that in the forefront so we can build those in so we have more protection with what we're doing. All right, so those are a few of my questions. Thank you.
Before I open up to the public, clearly this would be an impact on staff. It's not so much a question as it is a concern that you would be able to make sure that we don't lack in trying to address all of our priorities, because you have a very busy team and there's a lot of demand. So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
The impacts on staff are of concern to me, which is why we asked, and the developers have agreed to fund the cost of a contract planner. Her name is Kathy Peach. She's actually here this evening. She assisted the city with the Green Tree specific plan and was just really incredibly useful in that effort. And then the developers will be funding an engineering consultant to help project manage the engineering side of this. And they've also agreed to fund outside legal counsel to help bolster the city attorney's team on the various agreements and other aspects we're working on. So to answer your question, Mayor Carley, hiring consultants does not eliminate work because one has to manage consultants. Right. But we feel with the staff augments through the contractors, that's going to really help. And it's also exciting that the developers agreed to pay for staff time that working on this project. That's actually something new, the way that we've set that up.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the public for comment, which will also include anyone representing the developers if they choose.
Got to admit, Mr. Mayor, I don't disappoint. A couple of years ago, I mentioned something about senior housing and those kind of things, but it was too late in the process. And I like to thank Councilmember Wiley for her question because it's a top on mine. And when we look at senior housing, we're way early now, and I know this will come up probably 2 years from now, but it needs to be there. I see a lot of emphasis on other groups within our community. Seniors, they want to be here in Vacaville because this is an exceptional town. I'm not just blowing smoke because I live here, but it truly is. And of course, I don't like seeing housing going on top of ag land, but that's real world. We have to deal with that. And I think that the city of Vacaville is the best qualified to develop housing at the sacrifice of agricultural land as opposed to other developments that we've talked about. When you consider, Mr. Mayor, consider the senior housing, I'm not talking about some apartments that have wider doorways tucked away in some remote location. In the past, the city of Vacaville has done a very good job on planning out city housing, and I'd like to see that continue. So as I approach 70 this year, I've already mapped it out. I can get on my scooter when I have one day and go 1 mile to the Maya market. That's real access, not the 7-Eleven, but to a real market. Seniors need that, and it needs to be safe. Unfortunately, taking a scooter down Orchard is going to become more and more risky. In fact, I don't even know if it's going to be legal. So when we plan out this for the seniors, we need some wide walkways, well lit, and not stuck off in some corner where they can't get to the services they desire or need. It needs to be accessible and planned out for senior living, not just, well, we're going to modify these apartments. I think we have the right governmental organization to accomplish that. I'm probably running out of time, my diatribe. But I'd like to see that. You know, we talk about schools, and that's absolutely important. But there's this whole other growing segment of our community, and I know you understand what I'm saying. So thank you, Ms. Wiley, for making that point, and I echo that with the accoutrements that I added. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, come forward. Good evening.
Susan Fracchia. I'm a resident of Loch Padden. I've been live off of Poplar Road. I've lived there for 25 years. Have horses, a ranch, 5 acres, right up and down our Lockwood for many years. Raised 4-H kids. It's a nice community. But my concern is with all the development, which I feel like Loch Padden has been just kind of pushed to the side. We're county. The city has come in, they've developed all the way down Leisuretown Road with Jepson Freeway, or Jepson coming through us. And what's happening is all that traffic that is because of all the new build, they come down Poplar Road, Walnut Road to get to the freeway. And it's made it extremely dangerous for our community. We have talked about this we've talked about it to these ladies here. We've talked about it to our councilman, Mashburn, or Supervisor Mashburn. We've talked about it to the county, and we've also talked about it for the last couple of years of all these developments on Leisuretown to the city council. And I feel like it just falls on deaf ears that Loch Padden is like, okay, you're sorry, but we're gonna build all this, and how it affects you, that's too bad. So I really think that with Green Tree being developed, you're going to have all those people coming through our area. There's going to be a light at Poplar Road, from what I understand. It's where I live. They're going to bypass through Poplar, go to Kilkenny, and go the back road over to the country roads over to the freeway because of all the congestion. And the more houses you build in those areas, the more danger it is for our streets. We've already had horses killed by cars on our streets. We've had a kid hit by a car on a 4-wheeler. My husband was hit on his tractor by a car coming down Leisuretown, or coming down Poplar Road. It's just become dangerous. The roads are not wide enough to accommodate the traffic or the traffic that you're going to be sending our way. So before, I feel like the city doesn't really care about that because that's a county problem. That's not a city problem. But your city ideas are bringing all this onto the county, onto our county. One more thing about Leisuretown Green Tree project. I know we need development. I know there's going to be houses. We're not going to be able to stop that. But I would request that, I guess there's going to be a grocery store. There's going to be some commercial. Don't put a Walmart there. Put a Whole Foods. Put something that's going to be sustainable, good food, good farming, good community. Don't put something there that's going to attract, well, how do I say this? It's just going to attract criminalization. I'm sorry, I can't even go to Walmart and get a toothbrush. It's locked up, okay? So I don't want to see that next to my community. And I want you to take our little area into consideration when you're adding all of these new housing projects, that it does severely affect us on our roads, and it makes it very dangerous.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
I'm Marvin Chowdhury. We live on Willow Road. We're a county parcel. And I had a few questions. I'm kind of confused about the resolution that's been brought forward here. If you could go to slide 3, please. And it seems to differ between what's on the agenda, and I believe it was slide 3 that showed what the resolution was being proposed today. The agenda calls for development within the guiding principles for development within the urban growth areas. And the requested action there actually says adopt guiding principles to establish expectations within the specific plan. So there's a material discrepancy there that I see between what's listed in the agenda and what's up here. And a couple of times the northeast growth area, which we think we're in, but we can't tell for sure because some of the mapping is so confusing between what's posted online, what's posted in some of the reports. So I really think this should be separated out, that you should be doing a resolution specifically for the east of Leisure Town road growth area, and then the northeast growth area should be treated separately. It's a totally different animal, different constraints on there. And then I also wanted to point out on the outreach, one of them said that the outreaches were completed already, but one of them, the date showed was May 5th. So I'm not sure how that got completed, if it's a month away still. So again, it's just a communication, coordination, and I think the waters here are getting kind of muddied with what's being proposed. I have no comments on the east of Leisure Town growth area. I'm more concerned about our area. And specifically, as mentioned, there's small roads, a lot of traffic, and it's just getting crazy how fast people go down Willow Road right in front of our parcel. We've had a number of accidents there. Took out our mailbox a few times and a few other things. So I think that's all my comments.
Yeah, thank you. At the conclusion, maybe we can have some of those answered, but please come forward.
I'm Dave Jackson, and I live on Willow, on the corner of Walnut and Willow, and I'm probably, maybe just need some clarification on where, the first map we got, it looked like things were being built around or potentially being built around that area. And I wasn't sure of the boundaries. And it talked about annexation, because we're in the county. When you talk about annexation, so we're potentially bringing that area into the city limits, correct? And then what effect that has on those areas. I'm on, like I said, I'm a county, well water, acreage, those kind of things. I'm just kind of curious, then the roads, all these things start coming into play potentially. And there's, the idea of the traffic, like I said, I'm right there. And I see the traffic swinging, coming through Willow, getting onto Kilkenny to go onto the freeway. So anyway, just more for me for clarification on how all these things work. And I don't know if those areas were even addressed at the last one we had at the Lattice Center. I don't know if that area was addressed or not. I don't know if that's being developed. I wasn't real clear, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alicia Minion. I live in Southdown. Okay. I did speak at the neighborhood outreach, and I do appreciate staff reaching out to the community and inviting us to, this particular event was at Three Oaks. And I thought what was notable is that the residents that came to it, no one was in favor of these developments. Let that sink in. No one was in favor for a lot of legitimate reasons. So when you create a specific plan, it should be, you wouldn't do that unless it was extraordinary, that these developments provide incredible features that are super cool, unique. And what I'm seeing is with specific plans and also with development agreements, and I've said this before, is there's something that's negotiated that seems good and kind of makes the hook for it to compel council to approve it. But over time, because as you know, all these developments take decades to produce. We're still waiting for North Village. Southtown, I'm still waiting for a park. It's been like 11 years. I mean, we have half of a park. Nothing gets built consistent with the original plan ever in the history of Vacaville for anything. And what I notice is anything good that really compelled council to approve it is carved out. And so you have this opportunity to actually say no or to defer. And I think we have to find a better way to communicate with the current residents to address the concerns. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think any of the concerns can be really mitigated because, as we all know, consultants are hired with a specific scope, and then they have broad discretion to use assumptions to create an output that really says everything's fine, nothing needs to be mitigated, nothing's necessary, et cetera. So I'm assuming that based on the development that's being proposed, the 3 developments, if those get built, you have to look at the character, the feel of Southtown. So when you're a resident here and say, I live in Southtown, I live in Browns Valley, it sounds like a name. It's a name, but there's no character to attach to the name. So I've lived in Southtown since 2016, and I just see concrete homes. I don't see any character. I see that when, we had a development agreement in Southtown, and we all know the story. It basically, nothing came to fruition that was good. And so we're not building anything with character. Los Gatos, Saratoga, Palo Alto, Marin, Davis, Winters, they're building they build neighborhoods. We're not building neighborhoods. So developers have record profits right now.
Thank you.
You have leverage to demand something extraordinary before moving forward. I urge you to defer at a minimum. Thank you.
Good evening.
I'm Wendy Brecken, lived in Vacaville for, 32 years or so. My question is, why are we doing a general plan amendment now? Because usually the general plan process calls for every so many years, you look at the whole big picture in context, and you decide, does this make sense? And what we've been told is, no, previously it didn't make sense because the city of Vacaville was not ready yet for these urban growth areas. We have plenty of other growth going on, and not the amenities to serve the people, the current residents who are there. So schools, parks. We have one community center for 105,000 people now, one senior center. And we have a ballot initiative coming up where there's going to be 400,000 new people maybe in East Solano County. So maybe this growth isn't needed at all. It seems like at least there should be a deferment until after the ballot has been decided to know if we're going to have a new city in East Solano. Again, ask yourselves if this is the dream. I think there's an inside joke going on about getting the dream or not the dream, and maybe that's the development agreement issues. But to the residents here, this is not the dream. A dream where you have lots of new housing and no amenities, like food desert like you have in Southtown. There's not the complete planning process that you need when you do a general plan, as Ms. Wiley said it's a drastic change, and this is a general plan amendment, and it has to be well thought out, not just, oh, we're just going to add some new specific plans and some more houses, and it's going to be great because we have RENA numbers. Do we? I don't even know if the RENA numbers are an issue here. Do we really need this for RENA numbers? If there's 400,000 new people East Solano, is it the same issue with RENA? Can we make it a nice community for the existing residents rather than keep building, building, and building without too much thought? I mean, I'm not criticizing you. I know you're doing the best you can. I'm not criticizing you. I'm not criticizing the staff. But it just, you know, as a resident who's lived here and watched how things have gone, you know, from a nice small town feel, everybody knowing each other, lots of stores, lots of, you know, parks, big parks. I mean, the first parks out here in Vacaville over on this side of town are beautiful. You know, gorgeous amenities. And then you go to North Village and not so much, because now we're just requiring grass for our parks, you know, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
One of the previous speakers mentioned that at the Lattice Center meeting that was about this several months ago, not one person who wasn't in on the development was in favor of this thing or these things. Why is there such a rush to accommodate a bunch of real estate developers? They can cool their heels. They've already invested their money. They can wait. There is a lot of development already going on here in town. You can look around, you can see that we have a lot of, you know, interior development, a lot of apartments going up, like out on Peabody Road and this and that. Why don't we stand back and wait and digest this housing before we rush to cover up in concrete a little more ag land? And besides that, as someone else had already mentioned, we don't know how the magical city over by Rio Vista is going to turn out. We hope it doesn't get voted in, but we don't know. Why wait? I mean, why should we hurry? This could wait a little longer. I understand that the city has to make a plan, but okay, make a plan. Don't make an accommodation. And also, someone needs to answer the questions that have been asked many times about what is going to be done about the schools. Because why can there not be some requirement put on the speculators that they'll provide the money for the new schools? There doesn't seem to be any other plan to accommodate it.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Carley, Vice Mayor Ritchie, members of the council. My name is Todd Chambers. I'm with Lewis Planned Communities. I'm representing the Donaldson Ramos property tonight. I want to thank City Manager Bush, Director Morris, Assistant Director Pollitt, and the rest of the staff for all your hard work to get you here tonight. We appreciate all your help. Also, thank you for hosting the community meetings. I attended all three, obviously, and I didn't hear a lot of people say they weren't in favor of advancing growth. I heard them say they had concerns, and we listened to those concerns. So that was my takeaway from the meetings. I know some of you were in attendance, so we appreciate the staff report. We support staff's recommendation to adopt the proposed resolution and the guiding principles to allow us to start the planning process. Lewis has a long history in the city of Vacaville. We want to continue to partner with the city and its future growth plans, and we think we're the right company to do that. We're excited for the opportunity to continue to partner with the city and working with the county as well and the other related outside agencies that were mentioned. We know it's going to be a long process. We appreciate the residents showing up to community meetings, and we plan to have lots of interface with the residents as we move forward with the process if it's the will of the council tonight. Appreciate your questions, Councilmember Wiley and Councilmember Silva. I think it's important to note that there's no guarantees on our part too. We're ready to invest millions of dollars in a planning process to hopefully get to a point where there'll be some approvals and we have the opportunity to develop some new neighborhoods in the city that we think will be, they'll make the city of Vacaville proud. So appreciate your consideration tonight, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a little bit of flavor to what some of the other people have stated. I'm a 37-year resident of Vacaville on the south side of town, or on the east side of town. And when I purchased my home, it was just bare land. It hadn't even been built yet. And the developer told me that the area next to my property, since I'm on the end of the line of 4 houses, was going to be greenbelt area. And there was going to be a pathway along the creek, and painted a real nice picture. Well, to date, the city comes out and sprays along the sidewalk once a year to kill the weeds, and they come out and mow the weeds once a year. And more or less, that piece of property is turned into a enduro track for motorcycle riders and quad riders. And of course, I call the Vacaville Police Department, and they do the best they can. I mean, if they don't see somebody riding a motorbike or a quad, there's nothing they can do about it. I would like to ask the council to throttle it back a little bit. There seems to be a rush towards let's build, 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 build. We need homes, we need homes. Yeah, I know, I get it. You need the tax revenue. That's I think is what the motivation is many times, is to build something and then collect the taxes on it. Just to I did some really rough estimates. 1,000 units on 165 acres, and this doesn't account for even streets or sidewalks, means that the average lot would be about approximately 7,200 square feet. That's not a very big lot. You're not building a very big house unless you're going to build a 2-story house on it. Now you take out for the streets and the sidewalks and the parks, that 7,200 square foot lot is going to shrink to 6,000 square feet. What kind of houses are we building? Little cracker boxes? I don't think the city needs that. This city, I moved here 37 years ago, and I loved Vacaville. I still love Vacaville because it was a 1-story town. But it's turning into that big kind of megalopolis town. I grew up on the peninsula over in the Bay Area, and I watched Sunnyvale turn from orchards into it's one giant megalopolis now, from San Francisco to San Jose. You get on Highway 101 during traffic hours, and you can drive a whole 20 miles an hour on the highway. That's why I left the Bay Area. Additionally, the affordability of buying a home out here. But this rush to just build, 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 take a breath. Just step back for a moment. Just take a deep breath and say, wait a minute. Do we need all of these giant corporations coming out here and building solar battery plants and those kinds of things? Think about what you're doing is all I'm asking the council to do. And consider that maybe the people don't want it, and maybe we don't need that much tax revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Greg Brunn, I'm a principal of Wisteria Land Group, and we represent the A&P Children Investment, which, by the way, has owned that property for 30+ years. So they're not a fly-by-night investor coming into the community. I'd like to comment that one of our public meetings was not on May 5th, it was on March 5th, so it was a typo in that presentation. We attended all 3 meetings. I echo Todd's comments, and just would like to say that I'm really thankful for staff, for City Manager Bush, and for Community Development Director Morris on being so proactive in this process. We've been meeting with them, and I commend the council for the leadership that you have in as far as supporting, moving forward with this. This is visionary. What we're looking to do here is something that's unique to Solano County and actually to most of California on this process. And it's very, very much looking into the future on how we can plan something on a scale that doesn't have the issues that you've had in the past where things have been promised and not delivered. This gives us the ability to actually deliver on what the specific plan will entail. And so I just support you guys moving forward with this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and you coming forward? All right. If anyone else wishes to speak, I would ask you to stand and, yeah.
Somebody said they didn't hear any adamant objections to it. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm adamantly against this proposal, okay? This isn't my first rodeo. I bought the house on California Drive before they annexed Lagoon Valley into the city, okay? And then I watched the Gonzalez property get taken from them, forced annexation, because LAFCO came in and said, no, 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 you can't have an island or a sliver of property between city and city. I can see the same thing happening again to me. I'm in the Lock Padden area on Poplar Road, and I'm not going to stand for it. You know, I'll be the first one to start the lawsuits and all that stuff. You know, this is ridiculous. And let me make a point. I don't know if you folks are aware. I went to the water meeting, and Big Mother State, Gary Nuisance, wants to take 75% of our water. We own that water in Lake Berryessa. They want to take 75% of that water, supposedly to save the salmon. What they want to do is they want to put it in the Delta system so they can ship it down south so the people in LA can have green lawns and we can water ration up here. There's not going to be water to support this or that dream city. You know, if you don't have the infrastructure, you can't build it. We don't have the infrastructure. Our power grid is already taxed to the max. We won't have water because if the state gets its way, they're going to take our water from Berryessa. You know, 75% of the water from Berryessa. Can you imagine that? We built that dam. We own that water. The state doesn't own it, but yet they're going to come in and dictate how we're going to use our water. You know, this is ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. As far as the roads and the congestion, I'll give you one example. I know I've been out there once or twice with my neighbors because a tractor trailer, his GPS said, rest stop up Poplar Road. And the tractor trailer drives up Poplar Road and he's stuck there. And we had to back him out of the street. There needs to be a sign at the end of that street, dead end, delivery trucks only. You know, they don't know better. Their GPS is telling them, yeah, drive down here. What they're referring to is the one over on Orange Drive, but the GPS is off enough where it sends them down our street. The congestion on Leisuuretown Road is terrible right now, and we're constantly building. We're going to build a green tree. We won't be able to get out of our road. We won't be able to go anywhere on Leisuuretown Road. It was supposed to be a bypass. It's turning into the main thoroughfare. So I'll just restate.
Thank you.
I'm adamantly opposed to this project. Not no, but hell no.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on this and bring it back to the council for any comments. Or before we do that, maybe if you could, sure you wrote most of that down, so maybe you can address some of those.
I'd like to respond to some of the topics that were raised, and if I'm missing anything, please let me know, and I will do my best. Regarding Lock Padden, staff actually met with members of the Lock Padden and Maplewood community before we even went to council in October of last year to present the urban reserve analysis that was sort of the kind of the major starting point for this. So I just want to indicate that as a staff, we're very aware of the Lock Padden community. We've met with them now 2 times. The most recent time was in February of this year to let them know about these 2 planning efforts. And we have a very detailed list of their concerns and issues with traffic circulation, specific intersections, flooding, and some sanitation issues. With new development is not typically required to solve existing issues, but the developer group has expressed an interest in looking at what can this specific plan do to address some of those existing issues. So I think that part of embedded in the directing us to continue to collaborate with the county is that the county is very actively involved with Lock Padden, and we have started that conversation, and we envision that that community would be very much respected and addressed. A lot of the issues that came up at the meeting are things that will get looked at particularly more comprehensively because we're doing one specific plan for all of these sites versus doing piecemeal specific plan approvals where you just kind of look at the one small piece and you don't look at the global picture. There was a question about the Northeast growth area, and there was a question about the noticing. We noticed both the East of Leisuretowne growth area and the Northeast growth area as one notice to more than 3,000 property owners in both of the growth areas, Lock Padden, Maplewood, and within 1,000 feet. But then the county requested that the Northeast growth area get pushed. So I know some residents were thinking that both items are on tonight's agenda. They were. One of them has been continued to a date uncertain to allow us to work with the county. But if there's any resident either here or later on who wants to clarify whether they're in the boundary of the plan and have that conversation with staff, we really welcome that because that's what we'll do as part of this process. Getting to some of the other topics. There's a comment about just the idea of why a general plan amendment, why now? The city did a comprehensive update in 2015. Why wouldn't this be done as part of a subsequent comprehensive update? And the answer really gets back to the whole discussion we had here at council on October 24th about the urban reserve. So in 2015, the city decided to put this land in something called the urban reserve and to not plan it for residential development until there was a demonstrated need. And it was the urban reserve analysis that was presented last October that essentially documented, I'm summarizing a very complicated piece of work, that there's a lot of approved and under construction housing of certain types in Vacaville, but we don't have a lot of those smaller lot, more affordable single family. We still lack a diversity of housing types on attached housing. And I'm not talking about high rises, I'm talking about 2-story in most cases kinds of housing, some single story housing. So that was the basis for the 2015 set the table for the urban reserve. The October discussion analyzed the need to look at unlocking the urban reserve, and the council directed staff to bring this to you for consideration. So that's sort of the why now part of this. The school issue, I highlighted in my presentation, it came up again. One of the things we put into the guiding principles on purpose, and these were reviewed by the developers, and we kind of back and forth a bit, but these are the city's staff's recommended guiding principles. A couple of things of note. We actually have a guiding principle about school sites because even though as a city we're not responsible for schools, the fact is land use planning and school planning go hand in hand. So there's a guiding principle that states new development proposals shall incorporate mechanisms to ensure new planned schools are available to serve residents in a timely manner, and that new development does not adversely affect existing schools. And this is the most important point, explore builder constructed turnkey schools. This is something we've talked about with VUSD. They're interested in it. And of course, it says explore. And of course, it'll be a conversation topic with developers. But this is actually a new approach for Vacaville to look at schools that way. And there's some similar things about turnkey parks. Actually, that doesn't say explore. It says that turnkey parks would be provided. So some of these concerns are sort of, I guess I would say, baked into the guiding principles to provide that framework so that we all kind of know what we're trying to accomplish if the specific plan process is initiated. And then the last one, there might be others, but the water topic is a huge topic for all of Solano County. It's a subject of some future public meetings later this month. That is happening, and it is something that obviously is of concern, but not knowing how that's going to turn out. This project, if initiated, would require something called a water supply assessment, which would be prepared for the entire specific plan. It looks at the city's water supply, water treatment capacity, and there's also detailed infrastructure planning that would go into the specific plan. So I can't tell you how all of it gets turned out, but I can just tell you that part of a specific plan and EIR is absolutely demonstrating that there's adequate water supply to serve the new development without impacting existing homes. Happy to answer any other questions you all have.
There may be more that come up, but I see some lights. So Councilmember Stockton.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, community members, for coming and speaking as well. When it comes to development, one of the things that I harp on all the time is realistic expectations, right? And I guess before I get into some of those realistic expectations, the first question I have is, moving forward today, if we move forward today, when can we pull the plug if we don't like the plan, or, you know, like Ms. Minion said, if there's not an extraordinary or some sort of like incredible feature, or if it just doesn't, if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? If there's just not enough for the community members to really justify doing this now, when is the time that we can park the car?
Because it's such a long process, there's multiple stages at which the council decides this is not something they wish to entertain. You can stop it from advancing.
And that's before it's zoned, before?
Yeah, I'd say one of the earliest opportunities, I mean, if the council we start this process tonight and we get the RFP out, the contracts for the consultants that would be assisting the city with this effort will probably come back to council maybe in July. Like that's our target right now. So they start their work. There'll be a lot of public outreach and a lot of engagement at some point. And I have a whole detailed spreadsheet, but I didn't bring it with me. At some point, there's going to be a draft specific plan concept after there's public outreach, after there's some work. So the council is going to be seeing this plan not after 3 years and all that work. We're going to be seeing it at iterative steps along the way. So if there's things about the specific plan as it's evolving, as it comes to you, that you're not satisfied with, either individually or collectively, you will have the opportunity to provide that direction.
Will there be a time to stop after November? Because I guess what's frustrating to all of us, like the people sitting up here, the folks sitting out there, is on one hand, we have the state telling us, we got a housing crisis, build houses, nobody can afford to buy a house anymore. And then on this hand, they are saying, where they're going to take 75% of our water, and how are these people going to, cook their food and boil the stuff and flush their toilets and water their grass, right? So I guess the fear that I have is some of these things that are out of our control that seem to be contradictory, and we want to make good choices, right? We recognize the need that we want our kids to be able to afford to live here. And I know that they're not, realistic expectations is, I don't see too many first-time home buyers being able to buy the type of homes that many of us live in or have lived in for a significant amount of time. So I recognize the need for that, but I also think it's irresponsible if we can't give those realistic expectations, right? That we're going to have the water, we're going to be able to, assure that what is zoned is what is built with objective standards and some of those things. So I guess knowing whether or not there's going to be a new community, knowing whether or not we're going to have control over our water, right? So those are like big deals. So will we have some of that information before November or like after November? Will we have an opportunity to assess where we are with the state on some of those issues before we make a permanent decision on something that's irrevocable?
Absolutely. The council will be making besides initiating a process, you're not guaranteeing an outcome. You're not saying you're approving this. You're not saying that you have a fortune ball and you know exactly how it's going to, but essentially with the way this process is structured, that early part of next year is probably the time when you're going to probably get the first glimpse of a land plan and some concepts. We'll have started the environmental review process. And so there'll be many checkpoints along the way to update and to be capturing new information as it evolves, et cetera.
And that's good to know, because the other thing that was brought up is, I'm in North Village, and there was all kinds of things that were promised that didn't happen. Like Miss Minion, you are not wrong. It happens every time, and it's frustrating to hear it over and over and over and over again with a 15-year, 20-year, 30-year development like North Village. God knows if that's ever going to get built. It sure won't have a pool, I know that. But what I will tell you that when it comes to incredible features, right, like better be incredible. Like, because we get beat to death when we focus on some of the like piecemeal stuff, right? When we have like a little small piece of, property that they're trying to fill, as opposed to a master plan committee, we lose every time. So I do see some value in being able to master plan what they're talking about doing if the water is available, if we have reassurances to give people those realistic expectations. And, you know, what I would say is like the objective standards are going to be big. Parking is going to be big. We heard about senior housing. I think that is brilliant to talk about senior housing, and not just in the units, but for the amenities for them to enjoy as well, right? So I really appreciated that. So let's see here. I had one other thing. The other thing is, I think our neighbors to the north, you know, like our county neighbors, they matter to me too, right? And if they're going to be welcomed in, like I want them to want to be a part of Vacaville. So it's super important to me. Like I respect property rights, right? That if people have owned this property, they want to develop it within, you know, but also it's just as important, equally as important, that we take into account their concerns as well. Because I patrol the county, and I know it's a unique lifestyle. You're not, you know, you can't see your neighbors on their porch all the time, and there's people that have made a financial investment to live that way. And so I think we really need to be respectful of that if we move forward. And so, you know, I really want that community outreach to make sure that we really include the folks from the county. I know that you mentioned on slide 13 all the different people. The county is one of them. I would assume the CEC, they seem to be a big name that's out here, all the California Energy Commission with the water, with batteries, with all this different stuff. I didn't see them on there, but I'm assuming that they will be, because this is 4,900 homes. This is not something little, and I know that's not going to be built overnight. So I think that community outreach is super important, and that it includes the folks in the county, because I want them to want to be a part of Vacaville. Like we just had a huge project in Vacaville that affected the county over in District 1. And those folks were, you know, kind of in the same situation as everybody in the county. So, or everybody in the city. So I just want to make sure that process is really respected, and that we go above and beyond to make sure that they're included in, you know, and hear about some of the concerns that they have, and maybe some of the things that we can do to help. And if it doesn't work out, if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and we can't make the assurances that it's going to be extraordinary, then I don't know that I can support it. So hopefully you guys can identify whether or not this is possible or not, and feasible, and that we can give those realistic expectations, because we have lost this battle time and time and time and time again.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. Try not to reiterate a lot of stuff that was already brought up. Going through the guiding principles in the staff report, I just talked about the mixed income affordability at like all stages of life, but I would also like to consider one thing that we haven't really brought up too much is the different protected classes, such as veterans and 55 and older communities, because yeah, those can have designated households. I'd really like to see somebody work with Travis with their housing department, see how short they actually are, because I know there's people living in Vallejo and West Sacramento commuting all the way to Travis. One thing I don't see in the guiding principles that we did bring up is briefly touched on, is the public safety aspect of it. You know, we ran into a Southtown of traffic where we always do the traffic studies as a singular development, like, and even the Oak Grove apartments, which are supposedly still in the works. Like, oh yeah, the impact of that apartment complex isn't going to really affect the area, but the homes built on Orchard and Fruitvale weren't included in that traffic study, even though they all utilize the same intersection. So I want to ensure that those studies are done for the entire urban reserve as one piece, because individual developments may or may not impact the area, but as a whole it does, especially because while the middle of Jepson Parkway is taken care of, the end pieces are not. So you kind of bottleneck yourselves like in the middle of that. The other big thing I'll touch on that I know we brought up, to me, this is like it's all or nothing for me. It's like, let the developers hold each other accountable, make sure one doesn't go off the rails. It's either everybody plays nice, and that way it's a win for the city, the win for the community, and the developers still get to build. But for me, it's like, it's either it all works together or nothing happens with it. And those are my key points. My other fellow council members already touched on other topics. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Ritchie.
All right, thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to try to not reiterate what Councilman Stockton and Robert said, but I think first and foremost, I would like to thank the public for coming out. A lot of passion, a lot of energy, and it should be. It's a really big decision. I was able to attend, as Aaron Morris said, the first meeting we had with Lock Patton at the airport, and that was a great meeting. It was a lot of passion, a lot of good energy. It was late at night. I had no idea what we were going to walk into, and it actually came out to be pretty good. And as I watched myself follow Mitch, and what I kind of guided to the public there was, I replaced Mitch as the District 2 councilman. He moved on to work across the street to be your supervisor. My goal was to continue what he was doing and make sure I build relationships and make sure that we do not go, as kind of Councilman Stockton mentioned, we go into a fight with a knife instead of a gun. I think that's the way a lot of stuff's happened in Vacaville. A lot of the last developments, we nod our head, we say, yeah, we really know what we're talking about. A lot of developments weren't done in the best favor and interest of the community. I think things have changed. We're approaching this differently than we did 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and there's a lot of head nods to find out what the heck did we agree to. We're being very active. We're being engaging. That meeting, I made it kind of a goal. I look at this whole area, essentially District 2, from Travis to District 1, where we have biotech, as one concurrent piece. I don't want to be some ugly patchwork like a quilt. It all attaches together, but it doesn't match. We need to make sure that we do this right. It has to be all at once and be connected. I'm really glad we captured that in like the guiding principles about having a connected community. It has to work. It has to be together. We have to make sure we hit housing for all groups. One of the comments made were, I think the gentleman had, there will be some lots that have smaller square footage in the houses. I was taking good notes of, I moved here in 2008, 2016. I beat everybody. And it's funny, I grew up, I'm very proud to grow up in parts of Vacaville all over. My parents were divorced, moved 11 times by 7th grade. Every time my dad moved, mom moved. I've lived all over the city. I called a lot of home around the Orchard area. I was proud to grow up in a house that was 1,500 square feet. Not all the lots in Vacaville are these massive, beautiful homes, executive homes. A lot of Vacaville is 1,500 square foot homes. A lot of Vacaville has the lots that are less than 8,000. We're just not used to seeing that now in new developments. They went bigger and better, make mansions. But a lot of what we're doing is we need to get back to having housing that is affordable, that would allow our people of all economic demographics to afford to live there. We have to make sure that some houses, the square foot doesn't exceed 3,000, 4,000, or else people can't move back. People can't live here. They can't stay in the community. One of the things we talked about was about creating a community that everybody can feel welcome to live in. A senior citizen that wants to live in their community is going to need a house that has a single story, less than maybe, say, 1,500 square feet. They don't need a big house. They don't need a big yard. There will be some lots that are smaller, some lots are more normal. What is normal now? At one of the meetings we attended, I think it was the second one at Three Oaks, there was a lot of comments. One young lady was really passionate. She was probably 20s or 30s. She was really frustrated about the inability to be able to afford to live in our community. And I was gonna reach out and start talking about it. I just wanted to soak it in, but she shares a common problem. It's not a Vacaville problem or Solomon County problem. As of that comment, 85% of everyone in America cannot afford a house in their community because of exterior forces. The cost of everything has gone up. We're living in a 40-year inflation, and the cost of rates and homeownership is out of reach for 85% of every single American. We're not talking about like lower income, middle income. It's ridiculous. These are things that this is the now. We're here to make hard decisions for the future. Like, earlier I was reading this weekend, I was visualizing some kid in high school, back at high, whatever school you want to do. They're planning, they love the Vacaville, they want to come back, they're going to graduate, they have emphasis. By the time they get to their senior year in college, there will be nothing moving. They'll be able to leave Vacaville High, go to college, get their degree, hopefully come back to join the employment field in our biotech in our community and find out, wow, I have nowhere to live. I can't afford to come back to my own city because we didn't take the right steps to plan ahead. What we do now is 10 years down the road. Like, we're not planning for, majority of people in this room, like, you have a house, you either own it or rent it, you have somewhere to live. We need to think of the people that aren't in the room, that are in our junior highs and high schools, that they will come back to our community and call this place home. Because if we don't do forward planning, it won't happen. It's amazing. It's like, I know it's ironic because we're messing up some kind of agricultural land, but it's like farming. You have to have a vision and faith to plan ahead. You don't see the fruits of your labor right away. We have to plan, and later it comes up. We need to make sure we do the right thing for the city. The outreach was there. You know, yes, there's problems with traffic, safety, water in this great state of California. So I know a lot of the housing laws. I mean, I can scare you guys to death and no one go to sleep tonight of how things are out of your control already, so you don't realize it. But that's life. Like, there's so many laws you guys should know about that are already happening that we need to address. That's something. What Gavin and the crew are doing with water is crazy. I went off on a tangent last time. I'm passionate about it, but we can't control that right here. We can get together, we can come as we can vote, but that's something that we have to plan for what we can't control. We need to build a city, and as part of this community, that we're having mixed development and allowing people to be connected. You know, this notion how we worked with, so we attended the meeting with John Vasquez, Ms. Mashburn, and this is exactly right. We need to look at this as one kind of overall piece, but this is a partnership. It's a partnership with a lot of agencies that Councilman Stockton mentioned that we need to address. But we need to figure out how is this going to work together that is a win-win for the county, residents, the city, and all this effort we're doing for the Northeast Gross area and biotech. We're having amazing development. We have a buyer of Genentech. We need to make sure that we plan ahead for where these residents are going to live in our community. Like, everyone has a kid, a grandkid, a friend that wants to come back to Vacaville, but where are they going to live? It's a complaint we always hear. So if we don't do anything about it, they won't come back. Like, 78% of all the United States Air Force personnel that work at Travis cannot afford to live in Vacaville. 78% of the people that serve our country cannot live inside the gate. There's not enough housing. The government needs our help. We've always been a sister city with Fairfield to provide housing, childcare, all the services to protect our community. So let's just stop now. We expect them to protect us, but we want to help them. We want them to work, protect our country, but drive your butt to West Sac to live, because we don't want to build housing for you in Vacaville. So what we're always talking about, we're on the list for Travis leaving. Those are reasons why. We're not making the steps to support Travis Air Force Base in our own community, decade over decade. We need to make sure, if we want them to stay here, we want growth to happen with biotech and all the initiatives, we need to provide housing. I don't want housing. 3 years ago, my sister got T-boned. I live right off Leisure at Hawkins and Leisure Town. It's horrible. I know the problems. I'm not ignorant to it. It was very scary. So yes, Parkway needs to get built. We need to make sure we do it right. But the traffic is something that we have to kind of have mutually exclusive. We got to solve traffic, water, and power. Power is a problem. But besides that, if we want Vacaville to keep growing, we need to take this opportunity to really come together and make sure it is that kind of holistic approach. We all work together with the county and the representatives in this room, the community, to make sure what we build there is connected. Like the community that Alicia moved into. It's interesting, I lived in Vacaville so long, like 2016, it feels like a little baby living in Vacaville. Before you moved in that house, no one in that community wanted that development to be there. But now you moved into it. So there's a lot of hypocrisy always around. It's okay for me to live here, but no one else. Well, I can move into this community, but hey, after me, the buck stops. Like, you guys weren't welcome here. I remember when I was in Vacaville, Markham was the last development. It was a big outcry. For Browns Valley to get built, I used to ride a motorcycle along that road to the racquetball club. There was nothing there. It was a big issue. Read the papers. Southtown, big issue. No one wanted Southtown. No one wanted it. But it's okay if you guys live there. Like, we got to think beyond that. We got to make sure we provide housing for the next generation. It's just one of those things where the mistakes that happened in Southtown, the crying and kind of pissing and moaning of the community said, we don't want this in the community, we don't want this, that. So they didn't build any kind of convenience stores or community centers in that community because they didn't want it. But now everybody in those communities are begging for, they wish they had that in the community because now they're driving 15 minutes across town to go to the Nugget or go to Sprouts. Because those decisions were not made 25 years ago. So we gotta make sure we do it right this time. If we're gonna do this, have the courage to build it right in the community. So we have a community that's connected, they can go, they can walk. People who are elderly can make it safely throughout the community, be connected, but they have the services there. Like, we have to have the courage to do it right, and we have the chance to build this plan out from the ground up. So it's a lot of talking, but it's frustrating because, like, we can't find a way to always, I
have some other lights up here, so we're going to move on. Councilmember Silva?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation again. Actually, I have a couple more questions just to clarify some things from public comments, so I appreciate the comments as well. I think, it's interesting that we all, I think, deeply love the city that we continue to choose to live in and raise our families in. And it's interesting as much as I myself as a citizen have knocked certain decisions and positions that we're in, but at the same time, for better or worse, we still call this place home. And I absolutely understand why we want to make sure this place feels like home. And it's very obvious to me, I've stated it, we all stated in different forms, that there's just a lot of mistrust in our society with absolutely anybody who's different or sees things different or lives different. And I'll kind of come back to that in my questions just to see how this process is going to roll out. But I think thinking this, and without reiterating a lot of what's already been explained in the staff report, and with respect to the guiding principles, is that I think in this, the accountability component that Councilmember Roberts brought up, I think is key, right? So I've had great conversations with the Lewis Group. I'm really excited about the project that they're leading for 700 Park. How things evolve, how different folks come into play, those business partnerships. I think one of the things that frustrates us all is that, oh, it's not, sorry, I did my part, it's not my problem. So I think when we talk about accountability, a key theme throughout the state right now is accountability not just to how do we ensure and how do we go to our constituents and let them know that we have systems in place as best we can to not only hold developers accountable, but once those developments are made, how do we ensure that, particularly if we have rental units, as we try to make a more inclusive, integrated community for all income levels, that property owners, there'll be a certain element of accountability for property owners and for tenants. I'm tired of hearing this theme that, how I word it, that poor people are bad people. That kind of goes along with a lot of pushback on anything that's subsidized. Maybe, sometimes my wife might say I'm a bad person, but, I think that, for those of us that had to live in those type of environments, not everybody's the same. A lot of times it's just a couple folks that honestly, sadly, ruin it for a majority of the folks. So I think, I'm curious to see if there's something creative in that sense. And along with this community, and it's something I've mentioned before, is a certain theme. So it's some type of community-centered theme that in itself is related to other neighboring areas. So Vice Mayor Ritchie mentioned about that, how like a lot of new developments, they're in themselves kind of just cut off from through fairs and whatnot. And maybe that's part design, maybe that's not. But I think how we find that interconnect is key, particularly with the strong desire I feel with all of us that we want to be good neighbors to our county residents. One thing I want to mention, it was mentioned about horses earlier. I'm curious to see within this if we can incorporate, or if there's interest, to incorporate some type of horse trails in themselves as part of open space, walking access and whatnot, so that way it's not necessarily on roads that have cars passing through. Likewise, how do we ensure that we make our roads safer, which is absolutely going to be a challenge when you got personal property that would have to be ideally encroached upon. So if that's the right term. So being good neighbors, making sure we involve our key stakeholders that you laid out. So just to reiterate, that includes county, and our school district. I'm really curious to see the impact on our water and the electrical demand. So really looking forward to those reports. We all know that our aging population is growing in the state, in this particular area. So one thing I think we perhaps miss an opportunity or can see an opportunity here is when we talk about public amenity, if it's not a senior center per se, maybe it's a family center that's something that's more welcoming for all age groups. Or there's some other opportunities, again, to make sure that we address our particular needs with our seniors, particularly in that area since it's right next door to Leisure Town or nearby. It was mentioned that matching. So I think I'm on a tread as far as matching. The different areas. I think our standard needs to continue to be reasonably raised in how we meet the quality of life in the neighborhoods that we live in. So I know that when we're talking about matching, we want to make sure it fits. But couple last things. I'm looking to see how exactly, schools is always going to be a top issue. How exactly do we ensure when a school is needed, we're not looking at another bond? Now, the crappy thing is, out of all of this, if whatever cost it's accrued by the development is going to be passed on those existing homeowners. So in the end, it's, it still goes back to middle-class folks. But I'm curious to see how that happens to where, we make sure that everybody gets access to a good quality facilities and education. Last couple of things. I think, so I'll just leave with a couple questions. So in the layout, is that something we can still change, or is that just something to give us an idea of what we're looking at? And I asked more specifically, and it doesn't have to be addressed tonight, but in the future, preferably, the commercial. So I don't see any strong areas for a commercial zone area. I see an area for mixed use, I'm curious to know more from economic development and from staff, and from where our economy is at on how do we ensure, how are we making sure that we ensure that there's jobs, that there's, like was mentioned, a food desert, and the appropriate shopping and support there, because I think that in itself is something we talked about, increased traffic in other areas. Maybe that's good for those other businesses, but again, how do we find that balance, the quality of life? So that's something I'm really curious to learn more about throughout this process. And the question I would like to have more answered today is our effective communication and transparency in all this. So in the past, I've seen more recently how we have a Q&A type webpage. So in that, I'm hoping that we would also track any type of changes that are made, and those are communicated. So if somebody reads it, tomorrow per se, that 1 year from now, if something changes, because I'm not naive to think that nothing won't change, that in itself is reflected and tracked, and there's some type of justification or explanation as to why that was the case. So can you elaborate maybe a little bit more on how we would be more transparent throughout this process?
Absolutely. And one of the fundamental differences with this specific plan process versus past ones is it's looking at a larger area comprised of separately owned sites as one plan, but also the city is ultimately hiring the consultant, running the contract. So unlike a normal sort of developer-led specific plan process where a developer kind of goes into their headquarters, comes up with a plan, maybe talks to a few people, and turns it into the city and says, here you go. The city is going to have a much greater role in shaping the specific plan. But as far as transparency goes, we kind of learn as we do. Things like informational websites are just like a normal part of planning now, and that's something that we would definitely utilize. We develop a project email list, and we will send out updates on a regular basis. Actually, Councilman Silva, a lot of these details will be in the consultant proposals that we get back when we issue the RFP, because a key component of the specific plan consultant's work is setting up transparent systems for developing these specific plans in a way that keeps everybody informed. So I think we'll have more specific answers for you in that for sure when we bring the proposed specific plan consultant to you with their detailed plan.
Thank you. And just this comment is more for the public. We've had a lot of discussions, at least my past 3+ years on this side, learning more about the challenges of why you know, we talked about small developments versus larger ones. So this one, it is in itself, it's our first one of our largest plans to come forth. And obviously we want to make sure that we get it right as a council. And so I do think it's important that this particular development in itself adheres to an element of social responsibility, in the sense that we create a community that in itself is able to work here, be able to raise their families here, and be able to reinvest back into our communities, because that's really what the Vacaville many of us here grew up in, and where over time, as being more of a commuter town, we've kind of lost track of, and being much more challenging. We see that, you know, again, just, you know, trying to get coaches for, you know, sports teams and whatnot, and how, you know, parents are just tired just to be able to find ways to give back. So I'm really looking, you know, I think the Lewis Group in themselves, you know, they have a good track record, from what I've seen from my research, who've, you know, doing my own homework per se. So I'm really looking on how this particular layout, again, really supports the ability for us to set a standard, to build that trust within our community, and to make sure that people aren't left behind. Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yeah, sorry, just one more quick question popped up through all this. I know I keep hearing this is going to be a long time, and your best guess about how long of a process do you think this will be?
We have a very tentative schedule that we've been working on with the developers and by interviewing LAFCO staff and talking to just all the different parties. So we anticipate, if we start soon, that the final actions would come to council in winter of 2027.
Okay. Yeah, it's a long period, long time away. I know it'll be even longer between when the developers actually start developing and complete the project, because I know most of the people here probably won't be in this room by the time they actually finish all these developments. I don't plan on being on council that long at all. So, yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Wiley.
Just in light of that, and in light of like looking at the whole picture and people saying, we don't really need growth, we have all these other projects on paper. So in your crystal ball, what's the likelihood of most of those projects on paper being built in the next few years? I mean, are we going to have, like, Green Tree's a real thing and it's going to really be happening, but are there other ones that are also going to be filling the edges at the same time? Crystal ball.
I don't actually have a crystal ball, but I have anecdotal and actual data. So we see Lower Lagoon Valley should be vertical starting later this month. So that is something that's been 20 plus years in the making. Green Tree has started constructing infrastructure. So to your point, that's happening. That's real. It's a multi-year effort to get to vertical construction, but that's happening. In my department, since I also oversee building, we still see activity in Roberts Ranch and interest also in the Vanda Meadows area to continue to build out those communities. So I guess I would say that I do see a lot of our approved projects to continue to materialize, but with the inventory that the council was presented in October, there are definitely some approved projects that will not. And in those situations, we may see people coming in trying to modify their approvals at the council or make changes, but again, those will come back to you. But I guess I don't have a crystal ball, but I have to say that despite a little bit slower activity, there remains interest in building here in Vacaville, and we're still seeing a lot of activity.
And in view of that, I would just say that most of those projects that are getting built now are not going to be affordable to our young Vacaville people who want to buy a house here, because so many of them are priced out of the market by other people coming in. So if there's some way in this specific plan idea that we could find a way to make the houses affordable to the people who are here, rather than marketing it to all of the East Bay, you know, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, to the public, all the comments as well. I loved hearing some passionate words, community. You want that sense of identity. My understanding is, and several of us who've lived here for a long time have seen growth, and some of the growth I look at and say, was it Was it piecemealed? Was it really planned? Did we really get the community benefit? The truth is we didn't. We didn't, right? Nobody wants that level of disappointment. It'd be really easy to not necessarily have the courage to try and see what the future of Vacaville needs to be. Not everybody has watched and immersed themselves with the housing element plan or the discussion from last fall. There's a lot of gritty details that go into informing a decision like this. It may seem like a rush to some people, but this was put off now almost a decade. I mean, that's what was done. It was, all right, let's halt the future development so that we can see what the future is going to look like. My kids grew up and they moved away. They can't afford to live here. There's no homes. And so they wouldn't afford the homes that some of us live in 30 years later. But I want something that we can be proud of. I want to see turnkey parks. I want to see a turnkey school. We can't, if we simply look at small parcels, we'll never get there. And we will be exactly like we were over the last 20 years. And to my knowledge, we average less permits per year now, almost half than we did in the 80s. We're not booming building. I think the goal here is to plan for what could be, the 5, 7, 10 years out. And I think I actually believe it's responsible to do that versus to fear the growth that we all know that we don't want. But that fear will also cause us to be inactive in our actions sometimes. So I would rather follow a good process. Yeah, all the same things concern me. Traffic, energy, water. The sky is falling in California and in every city, no matter if you're trying to build one in the other side of the county, or even us trying to follow our own LAFCO rules to develop into the urban growth area and do it responsibly. The only way we can do that is to take these steps and be responsible to the community and to our neighbors in the county, and to have a new EIR that looks at the master plan, all the things that sometimes are worrisome about, how do we ensure that the type of growth that we're going to promote, that we would be proud of it. And we do know that housing doesn't generate lots of revenue for communities. It does help provide community, and so it's the trade-off on what it takes us to get there. So I would prefer not to move forward out of a position of fear, but out of a position of vision. A vision that also requires what my colleagues up here have said, to be accountable, to have a good process to make sure that those guiding principles are in place. So with that, I believe we need a motion. Just by simple motion, we can adopt this. So with that, Councilmember Ritchie.
I'd like to motion to approve. Item number 9A, the resolution of the Vacaville City Council to initiate amendment of the general plan for the East Leadertown growth area.
Do I have a second? A second. We have a motion, a second. Can I have a roll call?
Councilmember Stockton? Councilmember Silva?
Yes.
Councilmember Chapman? Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Wiley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ritchie?
Yes.
Mayor Cartley?
Yes. This is just the beginning. This is not a conclusionary process tonight, and I want the public to know that. This is the city needing to take the appropriate steps so that we can wow the community and we can do everything that we're talking about. So let's not let our community down. Thank you. Mr. City Manager, what do we have next?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. The final item tonight is a resolution for some budget augmentation requests for a public works project and 2 park projects. We have Brian Oxley from your Public Works Department and Nemo Gonzalez from Parks and Rec to give you a presentation.
Good.
Well, we might need to take a quick break. Can we take a 5-minute? Yeah, let's take 5 minutes. We'll be in recess for a few. In this meeting. So for those who are, we're going to go ahead and reconvene this meeting.
That's right.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah.
So that text or email that I sent.
All right, well, good evening. We'll go ahead and reconvene this meeting and the presentation, and you may begin.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. We are here tonight to request additional Measure M funds for the Ulatis Creek Bank Repair, Corderos Park, and Trower Park projects. These three projects were previously approved by City Council, and staff has been working on the design of these projects, and they're now scheduled to be advertised for construction bids in the next few weeks. And this is why we're here tonight, making the request for this additional funding. First project here is the Ulatis Creek Bank repairs. Phase 1 of the bank repairs are within the limits of Area 1, as you can see on the site map. And these improvements are located along East Main Street, adjacent to the Flag Plaza. Next project is Corderos Park, which is located within the North Village subdivision and is adjacent to Parkside Drive. And finally, the next park is Trower Park, which is located within Markham Heights neighborhood and is adjacent to Markham Avenue. One of the most challenging problems staff has been struggling with regarding budgets is the effects that inflation is having on construction costs and our consultant design costs. The construction cost index data shown here is from the California Department of General Services. The cost index rates are gathered monthly and calculated on an annual rate. As you can see, the rates between 2016 and 2020 did not vary much. However, after that, rates increased dramatically with rates of 13.4 for 2021, 9.3 for 2022, and 9.4 for 2023. And so far, the rates for 2024 are continuing to rise. The typical construction season for a project is between March and October, depending on weather, where interior building construction can take place throughout the year. And the best time for advertising for these projects for bids is early in the calendar year. Staff is currently working to advertise 6 projects within the upcoming weeks. The 3 projects we are discussing tonight that are in need of additional funding are the Ulatis Creek Bank Repair project that is in need of $1,350,000, Corderos Park for $130,500, and $684,500 for Trower Park for a total of $2,165,000. Along with these projects, staff is already also ready to advertise the Lagoon Valley Dog Park, Lagoon Valley Archery Range, and Nascimesto Park improvements. We are here tonight to request the additional funds now instead of waiting for the annual CIP budget in June for 2 reasons. One, the sooner these projects are advertised in the construction season, the better bids we expect to receive. And 2, we're trying to head off any additional inflation as we near the summer months. I'd like to review the projects now. The Ulatis Creek Bank Repair, as discussed earlier, this is located on East Main Street, adjacent to the Main Street Flag Plaza. The initial damage of the creek bank within Area 1 occurred in the storms of 2017, and funding was provided for the project in 2019. While working on the design and obtaining environmental clearance for the project, additional erosion of the creek bank occurred due to additional storms. This damage made the slope of the creek bank much steeper and also increased the limits of the damaged area. The original method of repairs for Area 1 was to place rock slope protection on the bank. However, placement of rock slope protection is no longer a viable option to protect the creek bank because the slope of the bank is too steep based on the increased damage. So a soldier pile wall will now need to be constructed to repair the creek bank and stop further erosion. Due to the changes in the method of repairs and the additional limits of the damaged bank, the project is in need of additional funding to construct the project. Environmental regulations only allow for construction within the creek bank to occur between July and October of each year. We discussed a few moments ago that staff is requesting funding now for all 3 projects in an effort to obtain better bids. But for this particular project, if the city wants to construct the improvements this calendar year, staff needs, staff needs to advertise the project now to be able to construct the project within that mandated window of July to October. And staff is concerned that if improvements are not constructed this year, additional storms cause additional erosion, and we could potentially have even more damage to the sidewalk and to the roadway in that area. So turn the time over to Nemo.
The second project on our list today is Corderos Park. Just some brief history on Corderos. In 2010, the city led an effort to master plan the park for North Village Area Plan 1. In 2012, Phase 1 of Corderos Park was completed, but several elements were eliminated for cost-saving purposes. In 2021, you all allocated $700,000 Measure M funds to build the omitted elements as Corderos Park Phase 2 improvements. In July of 2023, the CIP was adjusted for inflation and added an additional $70,000. This, coupled with an allocation of $30,000 from Councilmember Stockton for a backstop, brought the project to its current budget total, which is $800,089. And that brings us to today. The project will require an additional $130,500 to construct. And the third project on the list is Trower Park. Some context on this park. In 2020, the park was identified as eligible for a Prop 68 Park Environment and Water Bond Act grant. Staff applied for a $3.5 million grant to improve Trower Park. In June of 2021, with the grant funding still possible, council allocated $1.8 million in Measure M funds for improvements at Trower Park. In May of 2022, council directed staff to create a theme for Trower Park, incorporate community art, and add other amenities. In July of 2022, City Council approved increasing the funding from $1.8 million to $2.5 million for the modified master plan with Culture Meets Nature theme, which included community design art and more play features. And that brings us to today. The project is going to require an additional $684,500 to include all of the amenities that were initially in the scope of work, then added in that return to council in May of 2022.
With this information in mind, staff recommends City Council adopt the resolution to approve the allocation of $2,165,000 of Measure M funding to the Ulatis Creek Bank repairs, Corderos Park, and Trower Park projects, which will allow staff to move forward with advertisement and construction of these projects this calendar year. And this concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Councilmember Chapman.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you go back to the graph of how the funds have been increasing through the years? There. So in 2021, so 2012 to 13 is when it peaked. So what was going on in 2021? And what I'm trying to see is from the time that funds have been approved by the council in the past, years past, we're talking about 3-4 years and nothing was done. So we were just holding on onto the funds for, I'm just trying to understand how we would have a grant or funds allocated for the project, but yet the work wasn't done, even though you can only do it within July and October. Just trying to get an idea.
So for the creek project, staff had started working on the design of the project back in 2020. I don't know the exact dates, but after that time is when we had additional storms, which caused additional damage. So then staff had to go back with the consultants to look at looking at the project again. The limits had increased, and as I'd mentioned, the slope of the bank increased, so we couldn't do the riprap anymore. So we had to go back, hiring a structural engineer to design a soldier pile wall, and it just took time to be able to do that. We went through, had to redo the environmental process again because of the limits had changed. The type of material that we were using in the creek had changed. We actually, the design of it was ready to go last year, but we missed that window and we did not have adequate funding. So that's why we did not move forward last year.
Okay.
And we've been working over the winter to obtain the final environmental permitting that we needed.
Okay, and the reason I was asking, I was thinking that each time the approval was granted, the additional funds to augment the initial amount, that the project was ready to go at that time, that the sequence and everything else had already been taken care of, and you came in with the cost to do the work at that time. So
for the creek project, we received that initial funding back in 2019, and we haven't been back for that project to ask for additional funding since that initial time on the creek project. This was our first come back to council to ask that.
I can elaborate a little bit on the park projects. I wish that there was a simple answer that I could say, this is what it was for all of the park projects, but we've got, I believe, 6 different neighborhood park projects that were allocated some funding in July of 2021, I believe, and we staggered the improvements, and so not everything can go at once because of a multitude of reasons, including our staff limitations or whether we have turnover and we have new staff that we sort of have to integrate into the system. There is environmental that goes into all of these, and so that takes up a decent amount of time. At least for Corderos, there was an opportunity to sort of expand on some of the sort of combine Corderos with Nash Meso Park, which is a neighborhood park in Brighton Landing, to include a basketball court there. And so that delayed Corderos being built because we wanted to do it in tandem. There's a benefit and there's an economy of scale. If you have more work, you can attract better contractors and you could get a better unit price overall. If we hadn't combined the Nash Meso basketball court, which will also be bid with Corderos in tandem, the reality is that the basketball court at Nash Meso would have cost way more than if we did what we did. And so that was a sort of a strategy that we had to make improvements at 2 neighborhood parks in tandem and get cost savings for that. For Trower, we did end up changing the scope when we came back to council, and then the trajectory of the project has just been, relatively long because we had to go back to the consultant. We had to modify their contract to add the additional scope. It's a complicated site. It's heavily sloped, and that requires a lot of coordination with internal teams. And we're there now, but it did take this long.
Councilmember Stockton.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm very excited to hear about improvements to Corderos Park. I know the folks in that community have been very patient and also very appreciative. So love seeing the folks out there enjoying the amenities with the park. You said that, can you go back to slide 10? So I see the basketball court. Can you point out where the baseball backstop will go?
I didn't get that information. So both of these projects are being managed by other folks in our department. The Corderos Park is being managed by Hugh Hesserman, and he didn't indicate when I put this graphic together where that was going.
Okay, I'd like to know even later offline. The other question I had is, will this complete the park, or are there other amenities for Corderos Park? Because, like, I know we added the soccer goals, and you know, I thank Georgianne and her team and Reggie and all of you for helping with that. This basketball court, I think, is going to be utilized by a different age demographic that I think is kind of like craving something like this, certainly in that area. So I'm just curious to know if there's going to be anything else that's in the plan for this, because I really want to finish the park.
Yeah, actually, as it turns out, so when the park was initially master planned in 2010, it included all of the amenities that are happening now. So that would actually conclude the project at Corderos.
Okay, great. Yeah. And then you said that there were 6 different parks that you were staggering improvements on. Can you tell me what other parks are waiting? How many parks do we have that are waiting to be built or completed?
Yeah, the 2 parks that are completed and will be coming to council for approval relatively soon are Pheasant Country and Meadowlands. Those are complete. The next parks up that are going out to bid will be Corderos Park. The next one will be Trower. That puts us at 4. And then the last 2 would be Alamo Creek and Sierra Vista.
So those are the last 2 that are waiting?
Correct. Yeah. Bass Mission was also coming in tandem with Corderos, but it wasn't one of the original 6 district parks that was identified for, or I apologize, district neighborhood parks that was approved in July of 2021.
Okay, and then the only other question that I had is there's the trees kind of to the left of Duke Circle, left of this basketball court. Is there going to be anything that's going to go there?
I know that this particular scope includes the addition of trees. They have to do a substantial amount of grading.
Right.
So I think that it will include additional trees.
Okay.
But primarily, it'll still be bark mulch with the addition of some trees. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Wiley.
Thank you for the information, and I think it's pretty imperative that we do the creek repair on Alamo Creek, in Andrews Park area. So because it didn't get done earlier on, now we're having to do a bigger soldier wall or whatever it was called. So, and it looked like there was only like a 3-month period or something, July to October or June. So will we be able to complete that work if we get the approval for this augmentation this coming summer?
Yes, the plan is to advertise this in May, which would give us time to be able to advertise, open bids, bring it to council for award, and be able to get the contractor, get the staging area set up. So when that July 15th, it's actually July 15th is the day, then we can actually, the contractor will be able to get in there and begin work right away.
And then like in area 2, is that an area that's not quite so bad yet? So if we deal with it now, it's not going to get to the point that area 1 is?
Yes, so it mentioned in the staff report, and I didn't talk about it here tonight, that area, again, as I mentioned, we had additional damage to the bank. That was an additional area. It's not as bad. It's the slope has not been damaged as much. The plan is still to use the rock slope protection on that, but because of funding, we thought that area 1 is critical, and so that's why we were asking for that now, because the creek bank is getting closer and closer to the sidewalk and the roadway. So as you can see, we've got a little more area there in area 2, more space between the sidewalk and the creek bank. We are, just side note, we are asking, we've requesting funding from council in our next CIP budget to actually finish that design And then hopefully that next year we'll be able to move forward with construction of that area.
Which would certainly be best case scenario, so it doesn't get to the situation where it's cost twice as much as it does in the first place. Are there any other areas of concern right there along the creek besides Area 2?
We are having the geotech engineer. He is just went out there just a week ago to look between the areas of Area 1 and Area 2. There were some areas of concern. I didn't bring it up tonight because I don't know that answer for sure, but he had some concerns of that area. But it would be more similar to Area 2 where we have space between the top of bank and the roadway, so we have more time and it's not as steep. So if there was some work to be done, it would be with the rock slope protection.
A substantial amount of work was done on the other side of the bridge in the recent time as well, right? So that should be pretty good. All right, thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to open up to the public for actually.
Sorry, quick question.
All right. Councilmember Silva.
So as these costs go up and us, average people look at that and like, wow, that's a lot of money. How do we ensure that there's what gets put in feels like we got the value out of that? So if we're putting out all these tax dollars to these different parks throughout our community, how do we actually see the value? How do we make sure that it's not just some half-done effort?
That's a good question. And this is the best that I can answer it. One of the things that we discussed internally is, have we increased scope? Is that why some of the costs have gone up? And while it's true that sometimes, say for instance, that last time that we came back to council, we did change the scope a little bit, right? And we added some scope. But in the last year, we have had zero scope. The only thing that has been sort of added in terms of cost has been sort of regulatory things. We have to be in compliance with, the California building code and our own municipal code. And so we have to do regulatory things to make sure that we're in compliance with that. Sometimes that has cost implications, but otherwise we haven't added scope at all. And what we find ourselves doing sometimes is because we're hesitant to come back to council, or for whatever reason, we have these sessions where we're having discussions about, well, is there anything that we can pluck, right? And when you have those discussions, that does start to sort of, it has the ability to sort of like, there's a lot of purpose that goes behind sort of theming a park, adding components that relate to each other. Once you start plucking that, some of that thought that went into that goes away, right? It's no longer sort of that holistic approach, but rather like the fragmented, like an improvement here and an improvement there. So the best way that we can do it, unfortunately, is just through additional funds. If we get the added funds, then I think that original vision that we had, that we presented to council in 2022 is going to come to fruition.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open up to the public for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm encouraging the city, and I'm kind of what people call fiscal hawk, but I'm going to encourage you to do these projects as soon as possible. And as we know on that chart, Councilmember Chapman, we know what happened in 2020 and 2021. What we're going to be able to do as a city is going to be impacted by the federal government. Approximately every 100 days, the United States government adds $1 trillion to the debt. Our dollar has dropped in 6 months. I believe it was 23%. That meant I lost 23 cents on every dollar I have in my retirement savings. The city's going to be impacted. This is not going away. It's going to get worse. And I would, even as a fiscal hawk, say, man, you better get this stuff done now, because 1 year from now, who knows where the inflationary rate's going to be. And that impacts everything from labor, transportation, to materials. I just did some work on the fence at home. Holy moly. I don't know how many of you went out and bought a fence board, but it isn't $2 a board anymore. So with that, I would encourage you to get this done. And then, of course, in California, we know it's baked in that anything simple, they can't use good sense or common sense. We have to have a regulation that's, I'll harken back. Got another story for you. So in high school, I was still an Explorer Scout. Beautiful University of California, Santa Cruz campus up there. We were looking for a project. Contacted the people out at UCSC. They just widened the road. We got 100 trees. It took us about 2 months to line up the trees donated. Planted those trees, and that beautiful tree line is there today. Thank God we didn't have an environmental impact study to plant some freaking trees. We didn't have to have a special Cal OSHA guy inspector on site. We're just a community. We thought it looked good. Good people just pitching in to help make their community a little better. With the dollar thing, though, bad times ahead, folks. I think I mentioned that last year sometime. It's saving certificates and that means those guys' costs, what they're projecting is going to change. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for you. But we know what's occurred, and we know why California is so bloody cost prohibitive to do simple things. Gonna have to make some decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for point of clarification for the gentleman that presented this. Am I understanding this correctly, that there was money allotted to do these repairs? The repairs didn't get done. So now you're coming back and asking for another 1.35. And did I also understand it correctly that only repairs area 1 and not area 2? Because I think there was mention of, combining all of these projects in order to get better pricing with construction companies to do the work. So I just want to verify that it does cover both area 1 and area 2. And is this 1.35 million in addition to funds that were already allotted to do the work?
Thank you.
My question.
Yeah. Go ahead and answer that.
The funds that we are requesting now are in addition to the original funds that were allocated back in 2019. Area 1, the significant change again was because we went from a rock slope protection to now needing to actually build this soldier pile wall. That cost is a lot more.
So just to clarify that on that question, while you were in the process of trying to design and engineer and consult, obviously we go through another winter cycle, right. More damage occurs. Since then, any more damage other than what you potentially might come back to us with?
Not in that area 1, no. But the funds that we are requesting is just for area 1. That's where the soldier pile wall is needed. And so, again, because of the costs, we thought, okay, we don't have, well, I shouldn't say we don't have, we did not want to come back to council right now with this huge request to get area 1, area 2, knowing that when we heard, well, there's potential for the area in between to do, that might need some work, we didn't want to come and just ask for a large chunk of money and then go and say, oh, wait, we didn't have the limits exact and we might need a little bit more now because we're going through that process. So we thought for sure we know area 1 needs to be done. We know all the facts. We know the funding that's needed. We tackle that now, and then we come back and we tackle area 2 and potentially any area in between.
Okay, yeah, thank you. The public comment is still open if anyone else wants to speak. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Stockton.
Yes, so how much more do you need to fix the whole creek?
That's what we're trying to figure out right now.
So you don't know yet?
We don't know.
Okay.
No.
So for clarification, let's fix what is absolutely necessary for the destruction so it doesn't get any worse, either in cost or in damage.
Yes.
I don't see any lights. Couple quick thoughts, though. Is there any other, obviously from the parks, are there any other parks that there's going to be some asks coming to the council? Is there any other things? Because these are big ticket items.
Another good question. And the answer is yes. There's going to be other asks. I'll talk about the two projects that I listed that will be coming to, well, the two additional neighborhood park projects that I'm working on, those I am managing. I'm managing Alamo Creek and I'm managing Sierra Vista. Alamo Creek, from one submittal to the next, we changed nothing about the scope, and the cost estimate came back $500,000 more. And so one of the things that I had a discussion with the consultant today, and I said, let's try to get ahead of this and let's try to figure out, if this is indeed the trend and costs are going up, how do we mitigate this? Can we cut back on something that isn't necessarily a need for the park? Say, for instance, an area that is getting additional planting and irrigation that isn't necessarily going to change the nature of the overall design, but if we start plucking away at some of the scope, we can eliminate that deficit so that I don't have to come back to council and ask for additional funds. Still an option. The other thing is, we're adding a new basketball court there, and the cost estimate that we received is for a concrete court. Can we change the material to asphalt, and will that have a substantial savings? So I'm trying to mitigate that myself. For Sierra Vista, it's a little bit more complex. The scope is a lot greater. Any of you who are familiar with Sierra Vista understand that there's nothing out there. And so really what we're doing is a whole brand new park. And in addition to a whole brand new park, one of the things that was originally scoped out was a modular for our TGIF center. Currently, we have a partnership with the school district where they allow us to sort of occupy one of their classrooms. From year to year, we have to move classrooms depending on their needs. And so one of the ways that we have been trying to fix that is to add a new modular at this site that would be our permanent home. So every single year when the school year starts, we're running our programming out of there. We don't have to do anything in terms of adjustments or moving things. So that was the objective. However, obviously there's, to the gentleman's point, materials in general have just gone up across the board. And so something that was, when engineers' estimates or cost estimates are put together, they're based off of historical data. You work on a project, you get bids back, you plug in those unit costs, that sort of informs what you're working on. The original cost estimates that came in for that project were generated in 2019, 2020, right? Here we are 4 years later with 3 consecutive years of almost double-digit inflation, which we couldn't have predicted, and it compounds on itself. So it's not, it's not 10% from last year. You have to add the 10% from the year before and then the 10% from the year before. And so it's a pretty substantial change that we're doing our best to sort of find ways to sort of mitigate some of that. But Sierra Vista will definitely come back for additional funds. And I'm doing my best for Alamo Creek to try to rein in those costs. There is a possibility that I might come back, but I'm hoping that I can, in a working session with a consultant, sort of mitigate some of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More expensive, that's all. It's frustrating. I don't see any lights. Does anyone on the council want to make a motion?
Motion approved 9B.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Let's get these things built. Let's get the creek fixed. Amenities are important for our community, and parks are one of them. So we're talking about quality of life. So there's still a question. Hold on a second. Yes, Councilmember Chapman.
Yes, thank you. A question. Once you complete the 6 parks that you identified, when do you identify the next group of parks that you would be working on?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, let's go ahead, and if you can answer that, sure. And City Manager, if you want to follow up.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So this was a pilot project that we started as part of this strategic plan. And so it's part of that 5-year cycle of planned improvements as part of the Measure M budget. We do currently not have a designated funding source for renovating parks to the magnitude that you've seen with these 6 parks. We have a park impact fee, but that is exclusively for the use of creating new neighborhood parks. So that would be something that I think would be a good topic for discussion when we get to the budget discussion in May, specifically about Measure M, because this was really a response to what was happening in the world and in our region as well with the pandemic and everything. People couldn't go out, they couldn't socialize, and so here was an opportunity to take Measure M funds and put them back into our community, through our Connect program, and really get people out there and enjoy parks that were maybe a bit underwhelming. And so I recognize that maybe there's some other pre-existing neighborhood parks that have some challenges, but right now we do not have any beyond what we've identified as part of that 21 fiscal budget.
Yeah, thank you. Well, since we're on roll, we're skipping C because that's been pushed off to another council item in the future, not yet determined. Reports of the city manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. The only thing that I have, Corey's going to pull it up for me, is just another notification about our 5th Make a Difference Day. That will be out there this Saturday from 7 to 1 on Mono Drive. We have quite a few residents signed up to participate in that program, but we're always looking for additional volunteers. So I would encourage you, if you have some free time, like some good, honest sweat equity labor, and a good barbecue afterwards, we encourage you to, take a look at our webpage and sign up and come out and help us make a difference in that particular neighborhood.
Appreciate it. Bring it back to the council for any reports from the city council. See who went first. Councilmember Chapman.
Thank you. I had signed up for the Make a Difference Day coming up on Saturday, and I registered online, and within 5 minutes, I was going back online to retract my my volunteerism. I'm going to be out of town, and so, but I did sign up, but I did have to retract. So I wanted
Just told on yourself, didn't you?
I had to tell on myself. Okay, the other thing I wanted to share is Career Day that's going to take place tomorrow at Solano Community College in conjunction with the workforce development. I believe there was an article in today's paper in regards to it. I'm hoping that our HR may be in attendance. They're going to have, I see an affirmative over there. They're going to have about 80 businesses and hundreds of jobs. They're individuals who have a criminal record of sorts. They're saying that they're going to be not purging, but
Expunging.
yes, expunging their file, which is good to know. And that would help some individuals to be able to obtain the type of job they desire. I wanted to make mention, and I was happy to see that the city is offering free bus rides to our young people, to the youth. Is that after school is out, or does anyone know about that? No one? No one knows about the free rides for our young people up to age 18. I don't know how young, but up to age 18.
We'll get there.
Well, I put it out there, so I guess everybody will go and search for the correct information.
Brian, thanks, you know.
Brian, thanks. No problem. Gotcha. And that's all I wanted to make mention of.
Well, we'll miss you on Saturday.
Thank you. So
We'll
you
work
worked
extra.
hard doing that for me.
That's right. Councilmember Silva.
Yeah, thank you. So just if anybody's available. The neighborhood cleanup or the Make a Difference Day actually truly does make a difference. Residents to see actually people care about them. You know, a lot of times we have different ideas of how that might be and how we go about helping our neighbors, but it really is a powerful event that brings a lot of different folks together. So it's always been inspirational. So I'll be there, but I do have to leave a little early because I got suckered into coaching my young ones soccer team. So I look forward to a win this season because I was put in last minute. So no. The other thing I just put on everybody's radar, VacaCon. So this has been something that's been expanding. So I'm really looking forward to seeing their continued success on April 20th and 21st. So it's actually gonna be over a 2-day span down at the Aladdin Center. So you got to go online, get your tickets there. And then BU event. So this will be the 4th year. This event is focused on bringing out our community and different groups throughout the county that support or have different issues with kids, adults, elders with different abilities. So this will be at the Play for All Park on April 28th from 1 to 4. Completely free event, and it's always pretty powerful to see different folks come out there as well. So hoping to see folks come out there and to learn and see how we can support everyone in our community. The other thing, last announcement, or 2 more announcements. Bioville, something that's novel for our area, something that we help fund through our ARPA funds and different partnerships. So Bioville, in its sense, it's going to be over the course of 3 days from April 24th to 26th. And that's a great opportunity for folks throughout our community to learn more about what biotechnology is. I know it's a big term, but really it's just growing cells that make a product that can help others in different ways. So there'll be different events that are rolled out, free open access to the community. And then one of those also includes opportunity for what we call micro-credentials. So I just want to elaborate briefly a little bit more on this. So a lot of academic institutions throughout the country are looking at what they call micro-credentials. So it's something that you can get really quick training on a specific skill set that ideally you might directly be employable, or that you would add on additional micro-credentials. So it's like a 1 or 2 day training that gives you that skill set that allows you to be employable. And so this is something a lot of communities are talking about throughout the nation, a lot of colleges trying to figure out how the heck they do that. Well, here in Vacaville, we're doing it. So I really thank council for the support and supporting staff suggestions in micro-credentials through the RAMP program, acronyms RAMP. And if people want to continue along that path, they can, to support the ability to contribute to the economy, contribute better to our society, and ideally also be able to be in a better position to take care of themselves. So that's absolutely out there. I want to spend a special thanks out to a few community members, the Hardwicks. They donated some plants, some pollinator plants, as well as Lorraine Bernal has been a strong advocate for community garden. They teamed up with some scouts from Troop 191, it's a local girl troop, and then a boy troop from Troop 897. They're out there picking weeds, laying new compost, putting in weeds. I learned that teenagers, they got about 3 hours of work in them. So, but it actually looks much nicer than it was. What's great about that is there's even other folk, through the years, there's been other folks that just come out and they'll do what they can to help keep up the area. So all that's very inspiring to see that there's people that you don't even know come out and try to make the area better. And that said, last thing, do want to congratulate Economic Development Team and Solano County Workforce Development Board. They got a grant to actually look in how do we actually make sure people know about the career opportunities in biotechnology, and that also allows them access to a lot of cool data that hopefully makes a lot of our investments worthwhile. So thank you.
Councilmember Wiley.
I just have a couple things to mention. I signed up for the Make a Difference Day next Saturday to help, and it's always been really successful. You help people, and then they in the neighborhoods out as well, being really involved, and it really helps the neighborhood a lot. So that's the city's cleanup day, and then the following Saturday, District 6 has a spruce up day. And it's really for the residents of people south of Alamo and east of Peabody because it's funded with our District 6 dollars. However, volunteers from across the city are welcome for my 80 volunteer slots if you're interested in volunteering. But we have big debris bins in 5 locations in District 6, and people can bring their clutter, their debris, and put it in the bins, anything but hazardous waste. And the last 2 years, we got rid of 40 tons of debris from District 6. And it's really great. Recology is a great partner, and we work with Recology and have these big bins. So that's coming up Saturday, April 20th, kind of in conjunction with Earth Day. And then I just wanted to say in the last couple of weeks, I attended a Boys State presentation at the Veterans Hall, along with the mayor and a few other city council members. And then recently, there was a Girls States presentation. And it was just remarkable to hear the young men and women talk about, you know, their vision and how they want to really be involved and make the community better. So it's just kind of heartwarming to see our youth and want to be involved. So that was great activities. And then we talk so much about we are the city council, but we have a lot of rules come down from the state. So I just wanted to say that next week, several council members will be at the Cal Cities, used to be League of Cities conference, and it's working with legislators and just so how we as cities and across cities across California can let the legislators know the impacts of some of what they're trying to say and how cities need to be able to make decisions that affect our cities as well. So those are just a couple of things.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Yeah, I just have 2 things. The first one is on April 22nd at 6:30 p.m. There's going to be a Veterans Town Hall over at the Veterans Hall regarding veteran services being provided for Vacaville residents or Solano County residents. Get feedback and input on those services being provided. And the second one is, I don't know if City Manager want a motion or if it's already included for the CIP budget that's coming up later this year. We kind of discussed about possibly taking a comprehensive look and seeing how things can be reprioritized or guidance from council on. Because I know some of those projects are brought about during COVID and may not bear as much importance now as they did back then. Okay. Yeah. Kind of like what was brought up today is, I'd rather not waste money on the critical things that need to be done now versus because, we're just paying interest on those projects each year.
All right, seeing no other comments, I will just make sure everyone is aware there's other boards that many of us sit on, and so this is always an opportunity also to share updates so that it helps inform the council that's together. We've heard a lot, even tonight, about water, transportation, you name it, energy. Those are all big ticket items. Solano County Water Agency, they meet on Thursday, and of course tomorrow night is Solano Transportation, so I get to see a lot of the staff. Staff works above and beyond because you're here, because we're here, so thank you. The water issue is a real issue. The agencies that are represented in Solano County that are affected by it are definitely at the table. Just you need to know that. There is a state meeting, I believe it's on the 26th, and our beloved Justin Cole, you're going to be there, right? Yeah, yeah. So I appreciate all the work that's being done behind the scenes, and so there's a lot to it. There's a difference between voluntary agreements, which effectively one could argue it's still a little bit of an extortion. But water is a big deal, and yes, it would destroy our industries, it would destroy our families, it would destroy our communities, and so there's unelected officials in Sacramento that are making decisions that are very narrow focused, but they're serious, and so are we. So with that, I want to go ahead and thank everyone for their comments tonight, and we will conclude this meeting. It's now adjourned. Thank you, Vacaville. Good night.